Elena Marino stood frozen in a hotel corridor, her white dress suddenly feeling like a shroud. Through the cracked door, she heard her fiancé's laughter, cruel, sharp, victorious. $10,000 says I can make a nobody fall in love and drag her to the altar in 3 months. More laughter. Easiest money I ever made. Her bouquet slipped from trembling fingers. The fairy tale was a lie. The prince was a predator, and she was the punchline to a rich man's joke. But what Elena didn't know was that someone else had been listening too. Someone far more dangerous than Brandon Whitmore could ever imagine. If you want to see how a betrayed bride becomes a queen, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Elena's story travels. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the presidential suite should have felt like a blessing. Instead, it felt like an interrogation lamp, exposing every crack in the fantasy Elena Marino had been living for the past 3 months. She sat at the vanity while the makeup artist worked on her face, transforming her into someone she barely recognized. Flawless skin, dramatic eyes, lips painted the exact shade of bridal rose that Brandon's mother had selected. Everything about this day had been selected, curated, controlled by people who had never once asked Elena what she actually wanted, but wasn't that the point of rescue? You didn't question it, you just felt grateful. You're so lucky, the makeup artist murmured, blending highlighter across Elena's cheekbones. Brandon Whitmore, every woman in the city would kill to be in your position. Elena forced a smile. She'd heard variations of this statement so many times in the past 3 months that it had become white noise. Lucky, fortunate, blessed. As if she'd won some cosmic lottery instead of simply meeting a man at the cafe where she worked double shifts. She studied her reflection. The woman staring back looked elegant, polished, expensive. Nothing like the girl who'd grown up in a cramped apartment with water stains on the ceiling and a mother who worked herself to exhaustion just to keep the lights on. Nothing like the girl whose father had died when she was 12, leaving behind only debts, questions, and a mother too broken to answer them. All done, the makeup artist announced, stepping back to admire her work. You look like a princess. The door opened, and Brandon's mother, Patricia Whitmore, swept in wearing a silver dress that probably cost more than Elena's entire childhood wardrobe combined. Her critical gaze swept over Elena with the efficiency of a quality control inspector. Stand up, Patricia commanded. Let me see. Elena stood, the heavy silk of her wedding gown rustling around her. The dress was beautiful. She couldn't deny that. Ivory silk with delicate lace overlay, a cathedral train that would require 2 attendants to manage, a bodice so intricately beaded it had taken a team of seamstresses 3 weeks to complete. It was also suffocating. Acceptable, Patricia said finally, though her tone suggested this was the bare minimum. The photographer wants family portraits in 20 minutes. Don't be late, and for heaven's sake, try to smile more naturally. You look terrified in the engagement photos. Because I was terrified, Elena thought, but didn't say. She'd been terrified since the moment Brandon proposed. A grand gesture at an exclusive restaurant in front of 200 strangers who applauded before she'd even said yes. How could she say no with all those eyes on her? How could she disappoint her mother, who'd cried tears of joy at the news that her daughter would never struggle the way she had? How could she walk away from the only escape she'd ever been offered? Patricia left without another word, and Elena was alone again. Through the window, she could see the hotel's manicured gardens where white chairs had been arranged in perfect rows, where 300 guests would soon gather to witness her transformation from invisible nobody to Mrs. Brandon Whitmore. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. So proud of you, mija. Your father would have been so happy to see this day. Elena's throat tightened. Her father, Antonio Marino, the man who'd left for work one morning when she was 12 and never came home. Heart attack, they'd said. Sudden. Unexpected. He was only 39. Her mother never talked about the details, never explained why a healthy man with no history of heart problems had suddenly dropped dead, never explained why his employer, some import-export company Elena couldn't even remember the name of, had sent a single flower arrangement to the funeral and nothing else. Never explained why, after his death, men in expensive suits had shown up at their apartment asking questions about Antonio's associates and activities. Elena had learned early that some questions didn't have answers, or worse, had answers that were better left buried. She shook off the memory and checked the time. 15 minutes until family portraits. 30 minutes until she was supposed to walk down that aisle. 45 minutes until she became someone else entirely. She needed air. The suite felt too small, too warm, too full of expectation she wasn't sure she could meet. Elena slipped out into the hallway, careful to lift her train so she wouldn't trip. The corridor was empty, decorated with elaborate flower arrangements that probably cost more than her monthly rent. This entire wedding cost more than she'd earn in 5 years. She walked slowly, trying to steady her breathing, when she heard voices coming from a room ahead. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, Elena could see Brandon with his groomsmen. They were laughing, passing around glasses of expensive whiskey, celebrating. She was about to announce herself when she heard her name. "Still can't believe you actually went through with it," one of them was saying. Marcus, Brandon's college roommate. "When you made that bet, I thought you'd back out halfway through." Elena froze. "Bet? Are you kidding?" Brandon's voice was full of casual arrogance. "Easiest $10,000 I ever made. 3 months to make a nobody fall in love and drag her to the altar. Child's play." The world tilted. "She really has no idea?" another voice asked. "Please, Elena's so desperate to escape her pathetic life she'd believe anything. You should see where she grew up. Made it so easy to play the hero." Brandon laughed. "Besides, once we're married, I get access to the trust fund. Then I can finally buy out Dad's partnership and build my own portfolio. The marriage only has to last a year, maybe 2. Then a quiet divorce, a generous settlement to keep her quiet, and I'm free." What about the prenup? She signed without even reading it, literally cried while she signed because she was so grateful. "I wanted to protect her." More laughter. "I'm telling you, marry down, and they're so thankful they don't ask questions." Elena's hand flew to her mouth, stifling the sound of her breaking heart. $10,000, Marcus repeated. "Damn, I should have taken that bet myself. Too late now, but hey, at least you'll get a good party out of it. Open bar, right?" Their laughter followed Elena as she stumbled backward, her vision blurring with tears. The bouquet she'd been holding slipped from nerveless fingers and hit the marble floor with a soft thud. A bet. She was a bet. Not a fiancé, not a future wife, not even a real person to Brandon. Just $10,000 and a pathway to a trust fund. Elena pressed her back against the wall, trying to breathe through the tightness in her chest. Her mind raced through the past 3 months, reframing every moment with this new, devastating context. The whirlwind romance, the grand gestures, the way Brandon always seemed to know exactly what to say to make her feel special, chosen, saved, all of it scripted, all of it performed, all of it a lie. "Excuse me, are you all right?" The voice came from her left, deep, accented, concerned. Elena looked up through tear-blurred eyes to see a man standing a few feet away. Tall, probably 6'2" or 6'3", with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in a Renaissance painting. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes so dark they were almost black. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that made Brandon's expensive attire look off the rack. Everything about him radiated controlled power, from his precise posture to the way his gaze cut through pretense with surgical efficiency. "I'm fine," Elena lied, wiping at her eyes and probably destroying the makeup artist's careful work. The man's expression suggested he knew exactly how fine she wasn't. His gaze dropped to the bouquet on the floor, then traveled back to her face. "Brides don't usually cry in hallways an hour before their wedding. At least, not for happy reasons." "You don't know anything about me." "No," he agreed. "But I know something about weddings, and this doesn't look like joy." Elena laughed, a broken, bitter sound. "What gave it away? The tears or the fact that I'm hiding in a corridor?" "Both." He picked up her bouquet and held it out to her. "I also know that a woman who looks like she's about to face a firing squad probably shouldn't walk down that aisle. And what would you suggest I do instead?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "Run? Disappear? Embarrass everyone who came here to watch me marry the perfect man?" Something flickered in the stranger's eyes. "Is he perfect?" Elena took the bouquet back, her fingers trembling. "According to everyone who matters, yes." "I didn't ask what everyone thinks. I asked what you think." No one had asked her that in 3 months, not Brandon, not his family. Not even her own mother, who was so thrilled about the wedding she'd stopped seeing Elena as a person and started seeing her as a triumph. "I think," Elena's voice broke, "I think I just found out I'm a bet. $10,000 that he could make a nobody fall in love in 3 months." The stranger's expression didn't change, but something in his stillness shifted, became colder, more focused. "You heard him say this?" "Every word." Elena gestured vaguely toward the room where Brandon was still celebrating his victory. Him and his friends, laughing about how easy I was to manipulate, how grateful I'd be, how I'd sign anything without reading it because I'm so desperate to escape my pathetic life. She was crying again, hot tears of humiliation and rage streaming down her carefully made-up face. "He needs to be married to access his trust fund. That's all I am, a transaction, a loophole, a convenient nobody who should feel grateful he chose to use her." The stranger was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle despite its underlying steel. "What's your name?" "Elena. Elena Marino." His reaction was subtle but definite. A slight widening of the eyes, a quick inhale. Marino, he repeated softly. Antonio Marino's daughter? Elena's breath caught. You knew my father? In a manner of speaking. The man extended his hand. Luca de Santis. The name meant nothing to Elena, but the way he said it suggested it should. His handshake was firm, warm, grounding. Your father was a good man, Elena. A brave man. He died when I was 12. The old pain surfaced despite her current crisis. Heart attack, that's all I know. My mother won't talk about it. Luca's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Perhaps she thought she was protecting you. From what? From the truth. He released her hand but held her gaze. But that's a conversation for another time. Right now, you have a decision to make. What decision? The wedding's in 30 minutes. 300 guests. My mother's already crying happy tears. Brandon's family has spent a fortune. None of that matters if you walk down that aisle knowing you're being used. But everyone will think I'm crazy, ungrateful, stupid for throwing away. Let them think what they want. Luca's voice cut through her panic like a blade through fog. The only question that matters is this. Do you truly want to marry him? Elena opened her mouth to answer and found she couldn't. Because the honest answer, the answer she'd been avoiding for 3 months, was devastating in its simplicity. No. She had never wanted to marry Brandon Whitmore. She'd wanted to escape poverty, to give her mother security, to stop feeling invisible. But she'd never wanted him. I see the answer in your eyes, Luca said quietly. So the question becomes, what are you going to do about it? Before Elena could respond, Patricia Whitmore's voice echoed down the corridor. Elena, where are you? The photographer is waiting. Panic seized Elena's chest. I have to go. I have to. You don't have to do anything, Luca interrupted, except decide what kind of woman you want to be. The kind who lets herself be used because it's easier than fighting back? Or the kind who stands up, even when it's terrifying? You don't understand. I can't just... Elena! Patricia's voice was closer now. Luca stepped back, giving Elena space but not breaking eye contact. I'll be in the ballroom, he said. If you decide you've had enough of being treated like a transaction instead of a person, I'll help you. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Something sad and old flickered across Luca's face. Because your father once helped someone I loved, and I pay my debts, Elena. Always. Then he was gone, disappearing around the corner just as Patricia appeared from the opposite direction. There you are! Patricia's irritation was barely concealed beneath a thin veneer of civility. What are you doing out here? And your makeup. You've been crying. We don't have time for this. Come now. The photographer is waiting. Elena let herself be led back to the suite. Let the makeup artist frantically repair the damage. Let Patricia arrange her train and veil and criticize her posture. She moved through it all like a sleepwalker, Luca's words echoing in her mind. Do you truly want to marry him? What kind of woman do you want to be? The family portraits passed in a blur. Brandon appeared, looking devastatingly handsome in his custom tuxedo, playing the role of devoted groom with practiced ease. When he kissed her cheek for the camera, Elena felt nothing but revulsion. You okay? He murmured, his hand possessive on her waist. You seem tense. Because you're a liar, Elena thought. Because I'm not a person to you. Just a bet you won. Just nervous, she said aloud. Don't be. In an hour, you'll be Mrs. Brandon Whitmore. Everything you've ever wanted, right? The thing was, he genuinely believed that. Believed that every woman's dream was to be rescued by a rich man. Believed that Elena should be grateful, compliant, easy to manage. Believed that she'd never find out the truth. Right, Elena whispered. The photographer finished, and suddenly it was time. The wedding coordinator appeared with her clipboard and headset, organizing the wedding party with military efficiency. Elena's mother arrived, beautiful in a navy dress Elena had helped her pick out, her eyes already wet with happy tears. Mija, she whispered, cupping Elena's face. You look like an angel. Your father would have been so proud. Elena's throat closed. Mama, I know you're nervous, but this is your dream come true, yes? A good man, a good life. No more struggling, no more worrying. Her mother's smile was radiant. You did it, baby. You made it out. The wedding coordinator clapped her hands. Places, everyone. Bride, you're up in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Elena stood in the hallway outside the ballroom, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might bruise her ribs. She could hear the string quartet playing inside, could imagine the guests settling into their seats, could picture Brandon at the altar with that perfect smile that now made her skin crawl. The doors were closed, but they'd open soon. And she'd walk through them, down that aisle, toward that altar, into that lie. Unless she didn't. Luca's words whispered through her mind. I'll help you. But help her do what? Stop the wedding? Humiliate Brandon? Disappoint her mother? Destroy the only escape she'd ever been offered? 1 minute, the coordinator called. The doors began to open. The music swelled. 300 faces turned toward the entrance, waiting for the bride. Elena took a step forward, then another. Her feet felt like lead. Her dress felt like chains. Her future felt like a cage she was walking into voluntarily. She reached the threshold. The ballroom stretched before her. Elegant, expensive, perfect. White flowers everywhere. Crystal chandeliers. Tables set with china that cost more per plate than Elena used to make in a week. And at the end of that long white runner, Brandon Whitmore waited with a smile that no longer looked charming. It looked predatory. Elena's gaze swept the crowd, searching without knowing what she was searching for. Then she saw him. Luca DeSantis, standing in the back, his dark eyes locked on hers with an intensity that felt like a lifeline. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just watched her with an expression that said, "Your choice, your life. Decide." The music reached its crescendo. Elena took a breath and started walking. Each step felt like moving through water. She heard the murmurs of approval, the whispered compliments about how beautiful she looked, how perfect this all was. She saw her mother in the front row, crying happy tears, saw Patricia Whitmore's satisfied smile, saw Brandon's groomsmen, including Marcus, who'd laughed about the bet, watching with amusement. Halfway down the aisle, Elena's eyes met Brandon's. He winked at her, casual, confident, completely certain of his victory. Something inside Elena cracked. No. She didn't stop walking, but everything inside her was screaming. This wasn't right. This wasn't love. This wasn't even respect. This was transaction, use, deception. This was exactly the kind of powerlessness she'd sworn she'd never accept again after her father died and left them helpless. She reached the altar. The officiant smiled. Brandon took her hand, and Elena felt her skin crawl at his touch. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, "we are gathered here today." Wait. The voice came from the back of the ballroom, deep, accented, commanding, every head turned. Luca DeSantis stepped forward into the aisle, his expression calm, but his presence radiating such controlled authority that even the officiant fell silent. "I object," Luca said clearly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Brandon's hand tightened on Elena's. "What the hell?" "You can't object." Patricia Whitmore stood, her face flushed with outrage. "This isn't some movie. You can't just interrupt." "I just did." Luca walked forward with measured steps. "And I have a very good reason." "Security," Brandon called. "Get this man out of here." "I wouldn't," Luca said quietly, and something in his tone made the security guards hesitate. "Not before everyone here learns the truth about this wedding." Brandon's face went pale. "I don't know what you think you know." "I know about the bet." Luca's words cut through the ballroom like a blade. $10,000 that you could make a nobody fall in love and drag her to the altar in 3 months. "I know about the trust fund you can only access once you're married. I know that you view this woman as nothing more than a loophole, a transaction, a means to an end." The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Elena felt Brandon's hand drop from hers as if she'd suddenly become toxic. That's a lie," Brandon sputtered. "Elena, tell them, is it a lie?" Elena's voice was steady despite the chaos raging inside her. She turned to face Brandon fully. "Did you or did you not make a bet with Marcus that you could make me fall in love in 3 months?" Brandon's expression shifted from shock to panic to calculation in seconds. "Baby, whatever you think you heard, I heard everything. You, Marcus, the others, laughing about how easy I was to manipulate, how grateful I'd be, how I signed the prenup without reading it because I was so desperate." Elena's voice rose. "Was any of it real, Brandon? Any of it?" The silence was deafening. Brandon's mask finally slipped. "Look, it's not like I didn't care about you. Answer the question." This from Luca, who'd reached the altar now. "Was the relationship real, or was she just a means to your trust fund?" "This is none of your damn business," Brandon snapped. "Actually," Luca said softly, "it's very much my business. Because Elena's father once saved someone I loved, and I take care of debts." Brandon's father, Gerald Whitmore, stood up. "Who the hell are you?" "Luca DeSantis." The name clearly meant something to Gerald and Patricia. Both went very still, their faces draining of color. "Oh my God," Patricia whispered. "The DeSantis family." "I see my reputation precedes me." Luca's smile was cold. "So you understand that when I say this wedding is not happening, I'm not making a request." Brandon tried to rally. "Elena, don't listen to him. He's clearly trying to manipulate you. Like you manipulated me." Elena pulled off her engagement ring, 3 carats of lies, and threw it at Brandon's feet. "I heard you, Brandon. I heard you laughing about how pathetic I was, how easy to fool. How grateful I'd be for scraps of affection from someone like you. You're making a mistake, Brandon said, his voice turning hard. You walk away from this wedding, and what do you have? Nothing. No one. You'll go back to your sad little life. Better a sad life built on truth than a golden cage built on lies. The words came from somewhere deep inside Elena, someplace she didn't know existed until this moment. She turned to Luca. You said you'd help me. I did, and I will. Then get me out of here. Luca offered his arm. Elena took it, feeling the solid strength beneath the expensive fabric of his suit. This isn't over, Brandon shouted. You can't just walk away. I'll sue you for breach of contract. You'll do nothing, Luca said, his voice dropping to a register that made even Brandon shut up. Because if you come after Elena Marino in any way, legally, financially, or otherwise, you'll discover exactly why people don't cross my family. Are we clear? Brandon's face went from red to white. Whatever he saw in Luca's eyes made him take a step back. Luca turned to Elena. Ready? Elena looked out at the 300 guests, some shocked, some scandalized, some clearly enjoying the drama. She found her mother's face in the crowd, saw the confusion there, the hurt, the disappointment. I'm sorry, Mama, Elena whispered, but I can't do this. Then she let Luca DeSantis guide her down the aisle, away from the altar, away from Brandon's lies, away from the fairy tale that had never been real. As they reached the ballroom doors, Elena heard Brandon's voice one last time. You'll regret this. You're nothing without me. Nothing. Luca paused, looking back over his shoulder. She was always something. You just never bothered to see it. Then they were through the doors into the corridor, and Elena was running, train and veil flying behind her, Luca keeping pace beside her with easy grace. They burst out of the hotel into harsh afternoon sunlight. A car was already waiting, black, expensive, windows tinted. Luca opened the door. Get in. Elena hesitated for only a second. Then she climbed into the back seat, her wedding dress filling the space like a white cloud. Luca slid in beside her and tapped the partition. The car pulled smoothly away from the hotel. Only then did Elena start shaking. I just destroyed my wedding. No, Luca's voice was firm. You just saved yourself from making a terrible mistake. But my mother, she'll be so disappointed. She'll understand, eventually. And if she doesn't, that's her failing, not yours. Elena laughed, a broken sound that turned into a sob. I don't even know you. Why did you do that? Why did you help me? Luca was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the city passing by. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old grief. Because 17 years ago, your father saved the life of someone I loved more than anything in this world. He didn't have to. He knew the risks. He did it anyway. Luca turned to look at Elena, and she saw something raw in his dark eyes. He died protecting her, Elena. And I've spent 17 years trying to find his family, trying to repay that debt. When I learned that Antonio Marino's daughter was about to marry Brandon Whitmore, a man I know to be a liar and a user, I knew what I had to do. My father died of a heart attack, Elena whispered. That's what they told us. Your father died because bad men wanted to hurt my family, and he stood in their way. Luca's jaw tightened. Your mother was told it was a heart attack to protect you both, to keep you out of a world that had already taken too much. Elena's mind reeled. What world? What are you talking about? I'll explain everything, but first let's get you somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, somewhere you can process what just happened. Where are we going? Luca's expression softened slightly. Home. Elena looked down at her wedding dress, at the ring mark still visible on her finger, at the life she'd just blown up spectacularly in front of 300 witnesses. She should feel terrified, panicked, lost. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 months. She felt free. The car wound through the city for what felt like hours, though Elena suspected it was only 40 minutes. She watched the familiar streets give way to unfamiliar ones, the buildings growing taller and more elegant, until finally they turned onto a private drive flanked by iron gates that opened at their approach. Luca's estate sprawled before them like something from another world. Stone walls covered in ivy, manicured gardens that looked like paintings. A mansion that managed to be both imposing and somehow welcoming, with warm light spilling from tall windows. This is where you live? Elena's voice came out small. When I'm in the city, yes. Luca helped her out of the car, his hand steady as she struggled with the layers of her dress. My staff has been instructed to give you privacy. You're safe here, Elena. No one can reach you unless you want them to. A woman appeared at the entrance, 50s, elegant, with kind eyes, and the bearing of someone who'd been managing households longer than Elena had been alive. Mrs. Chen, this is Elena Marino. She'll be staying with us. Please prepare the East guest suite and find her something comfortable to wear. Mrs. Chen's gaze took in the wedding dress without a flicker of surprise. Of course, Mr. DeSantis. Miss Marino, if you'll follow me. Elena glanced at Luca, suddenly uncertain. Everything had happened so fast. The wedding, the objection, the escape. Now she was standing in a stranger's mansion wearing a dress that cost more than her car, with no plan and no idea what came next. Go, Luca said gently. Get comfortable. We'll talk when you're ready. The guest suite was larger than Elena's entire apartment. Mrs. Chen showed her the bathroom, all marble and gold fixtures, and laid out clothes on the bed. Soft pants, a cashmere sweater, everything in Elena's size as if they'd been waiting for her. How did you know? Mr. DeSantis is very thorough, Mrs. Chen said with a small smile. Take your time, dear. Ring if you need anything. Alone, Elena caught sight of herself in the full-length mirror. The bride staring back looked like a stranger. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect dress. All of it a costume for a role she'd never wanted to play. She started pulling pins from her hair with shaking fingers. The elaborate updo collapsed, dark waves tumbling around her shoulders. She scrubbed at her makeup with expensive face wash, watching the bridal mask wash away. She couldn't get out of the dress alone, too many buttons, so she rang for Mrs. Chen, who helped her without comment or question. Finally, dressed in borrowed clothes with her face clean and her hair loose, Elena looked like herself again. The relief was overwhelming. She found Luca in what Mrs. Chen called the study, a room lined floor to ceiling with books, dominated by a massive desk and furniture that looked antique but comfortable. He'd shed his suit jacket and tie, rolled up his sleeves, and was staring at a laptop screen with an expression of intense concentration. He looked up when she entered. Better? Much. Elena hovered in the doorway. Thank you. For the clothes, for the room, for everything. Sit. Luca gestured to the chair across from his desk. We need to talk. Elena sat, her stomach knotting with anxiety. About my father. Yes, but first, Luca closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. You need to understand something about the world I come from. My family's business is legitimate now, has been for 2 decades, but we weren't always conventional. Conventional how? Luca's smile was wry. The DeSantis family built their fortune through import-export. Some of those imports were legal, some were not. By the time I inherited control, I'd already decided to go legitimate. It took years to clean everything up, to establish proper businesses, to distance ourselves from the old ways. But the reputation remains. Elena's mind raced. My father worked in import-export. He did, for a company that was a front for one of our competitors. But Antonio didn't know that when he took the job. He thought he was doing inventory management for a shipping company. Luca's expression darkened. By the time he realized what he'd gotten involved in, he had a wife and daughter to support. He couldn't just quit. So what happened? Luca stood and walked to the window, his back to Elena. 17 years ago, there was a woman. Her name was Isabella. She was brilliant, kind, stubborn as hell. She worked for a legal aid nonprofit, helping immigrants navigate the system. His voice softened with old affection. She was also the love of my life. Elena's chest tightened at the past tense. Isabella started noticing patterns. Immigrants who'd take jobs with certain shipping companies and then disappear. Families who'd come looking for them and get stonewalled. She started investigating. Luca turned back to face Elena. She got too close to the truth, and the people running those operations decided she was a problem that needed to be eliminated. Oh no! Your father was doing a delivery to one of their warehouses the night they came for her. He saw them grab her from the parking lot. He could have looked away, should have for his own safety. Instead, he intervened. Luca's jaw tightened. He fought 3 armed men with nothing but a tire iron, gave Isabella time to run and call for help. By the time my security arrived, Antonio had taken 2 bullets, one to the shoulder, one to the chest. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. They told us heart attack. Because that's what I told them to tell you. Luca's voice was heavy with old guilt. Antonio was still alive when we got him to the hospital. Barely. He made me promise 2 things before he died. First, that I'd protect Isabella. Second, that I'd keep his family out of it. He didn't want you or your mother targeted. Didn't want you pulled into a world of violence and revenge. So you lied to us. I protected you, as he asked. Luca returned to his desk, pulling out a file folder. I set up a trust fund in your name. Paid your mother's rent for years through a dummy corporation so she wouldn't know where the money came from. Made sure you had what you needed without drawing attention to why. He slid the folder across the desk. Elena opened it with trembling hands. Inside were documents, payment records, account statements, all bearing her name. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over 17 years. You've been watching us this whole time. Watching over you. There's a difference. Luca's gaze was steady. I owed your father my life. More than that, I owed him Isabella's life. The least I could do was make sure his sacrifice wasn't for nothing. Elena's mind spun. Does my mother know any of this? No. Antonio made me swear she wouldn't. He thought the truth would put her in danger. Maybe he was right. Luca leaned back in his chair. The men who killed him are all dead or in prison now. I made sure of that. But your mother was never told because I kept my promise. And Isabella? Pain flickered across Luca's face. She lived. Thanks to your father, she lived. We were together for another 3 years. Then cancer took her. He said it matter-of-factly, but Elena could hear the grief beneath. She died knowing she'd been given those extra years because a stranger chose to be a hero. Silence fell between them. Elena stared at the documents in her hands, trying to reconcile this version of her father's death with the sanitized story she'd been told. Antonio Marino, the quiet man who'd worked long hours and played chess with her on Sundays, had died fighting armed men to save someone he didn't even know. Why tell me now? Elena finally asked. Why not just keep sending money and staying invisible? Because you were about to marry Brandon Whitmore. Luca's expression hardened. I have people who keep track of you. Nothing invasive, just checking in, making sure you're safe. When I learned about the engagement, I had Brandon investigated and found out about the bet. Among other things, the trust fund situation. The prenup designed to leave you with almost nothing after a divorce. The fact that he'd done this before, found vulnerable women, used them, discarded them. Luca's voice was ice. I wasn't going to let Antonio Marino's daughter walk into that trap. So you came to the wedding? I came to the wedding. I didn't plan to object. I was going to pull you aside quietly, tell you what I knew, let you make an informed choice. His mouth quirked. Then I saw you in that hallway, saw the devastation on your face, and I knew the only way to save you was to blow everything up spectacularly. Elena thought about the 300 guests, the humiliation on Brandon's face, the scandal that was probably already spreading across social media. I destroyed his reputation. He destroyed his own reputation. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Luca pulled out his phone and turned it toward Elena. It's already news. The screen showed a gossip site. Whitmore wedding ends in scandal. Below it, a blurry photo of Elena and Luca leaving the hotel. The comments were already in the thousands. Oh God. Don't read them, Luca advised. Half will call you a gold digger who traded up. The other half will call you an idiot for walking away from money. None of them know the truth, and their opinions don't matter. My mother, she's probably seen this. As if on cue, Elena's phone, still tucked in the small bag Mrs. Chen had retrieved from the hotel, started ringing. She pulled it out. 37 missed calls, 23 voicemails, texts flooding in faster than she could count. One from her mother. Elena Maria Marino, what have you done? Another from Brandon. You'll regret this. Several from numbers she didn't recognize, probably reporters. You don't have to answer any of them, Luca said quietly. Not until you're ready. But Elena was already calling her mother. It rang 4 times before Rosa Marino answered, her voice thick with tears. Mija, tell me this is a mistake. Tell me you didn't just walk out on your wedding. Mama, I can explain. Explain what? How you humiliated us in front of everyone? How you threw away your future? Elena, what were you thinking? I was thinking that I didn't want to marry a man who made a bet about me. Elena's voice rose. Brandon never loved me, Mama. It was all fake, all of it. Fake? Elena, he proposed. He bought you a ring. He was giving you everything. He was using me to access his trust fund. I overheard him, Mama. Him and his friends laughing about how easy I was to fool, how grateful I'd be, how I'd sign anything without reading it. Silence on the other end. Then, quieter. You heard this yourself? Every word. Elena's throat tightened. I wasn't a fiancé to him. I was a transaction, a loophole. And I couldn't stand there and let everyone watch me marry someone who saw me as nothing. Rosa was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, but still strained. And this man who helped you, this Luca DeSantis, who is he? Elena glanced at Luca, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. He knew Papa. He came to the wedding to help me. Your father has been gone 17 years. How does a stranger suddenly appear and know about him? It's complicated, Mama. Can we talk about this in person? Please? I'll explain everything, I promise. Just not over the phone. Another pause, then, where are you? Safe? I'm somewhere safe. With this stranger? Mama? Elena, I don't care how bad Brandon was. You don't know this man? You're in his house, wearing his clothes. Rosa's voice climbed with panic. Come home, now. We'll figure this out together. I can't come home yet, not until things calm down. Things won't calm down. This is a scandal. People are calling me, asking questions, saying terrible things. I'm sorry. Elena felt tears building. I'm so sorry you're caught in this. But Mama, I couldn't do it. I couldn't marry him knowing what I know. You should have come to me first. We could have talked. There wasn't time. The wedding was starting. I had to choose right then. Rosa made a frustrated sound. So you chose to trust a stranger over your own family? That's not fair. None of this is fair, Elena. Your whole life I've sacrificed for you. Worked myself to exhaustion so you could have opportunities. And the one time you get a real chance at security, you throw it away. The words hit like physical blows. Elena blinked back tears. Mama, please. I can't talk about this right now. I'm too upset. Call me when you're ready to come home and face what you've done. The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, feeling hollowed out. Luca was quiet, giving her space to process. She's angry, Elena finally said. She's scared. There's a difference. Luca stood and moved to a sidebar, pouring amber liquid into 2 glasses. She built her entire hope for your future on that wedding. Now it's gone, and she doesn't know what comes next. I don't know what comes next either. Luca handed her a glass. Then we figure it out together. He raised his own glass. To new beginnings. And to Antonio Marino, who taught his daughter to choose honor over convenience. Elena clinked her glass against his, the crystal ringing clear. The whiskey burned going down but warmed her chest. What happens now? With Brandon, I mean. He's not going to just let this go. No, Luca agreed. He won't. Men like Brandon don't handle public humiliation well. He'll retaliate. How? I don't know yet. But I promise you this. Whatever he tries, he'll fail. You're under my protection now, Elena. That means something in this city. Because of your reputation. Because of what I'm willing to do to keep my word. Luca's expression was calm, but his eyes were steel. Your father died protecting someone I loved. I will not let his daughter come to harm. Not from Brandon Whitmore, not from anyone. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mrs. Chen appeared. Mr. DeSantis, you have a call. Gerald Whitmore. Luca's eyebrow raised. Brandon's father. Interesting. He looked at Elena. Do you want to hear this? She nodded. Luca put the call on speaker. Gerald, I expected to hear from you. Gerald Whitmore's voice was tight with controlled rage. What the hell do you think you're doing, DeSantis? I think I stopped a wedding between a liar and the daughter of a man who deserves better legacy than being a punchline to his son-in-law's bet. You humiliated my family in front of 300 people. Your son humiliated himself. I just made sure everyone knew about it. That girl is confused, manipulated. That woman, Luca corrected, his voice dropping to dangerous quiet, is sitting right here. And she's neither confused nor manipulated. She's informed, which is more than your son allowed her to be. Silence. Then, Elena? You're there? I'm here, Mr. Whitmore. Elena's voice was steadier than she felt. Listen to me very carefully. Whatever Luca DeSantis has told you about my son, whatever lies, I heard Brandon myself, Elena interrupted. I heard him tell his friends that I was a bet, that he was using me to access his trust fund, that the marriage would last a year, maybe 2, before a quiet divorce. You misunderstood. I didn't misunderstand anything. He called me a nobody, said I was so desperate to escape my pathetic life I'd believe anything. Elena felt anger rising, hot and clean. He was right about one thing. I was desperate. But not anymore. Gerald's tone changed, became calculating. Elena, be reasonable. You signed a contract. There are consequences for backing out. The contract was for a marriage, Luca said smoothly. There is no marriage. Therefore, the contract is void. The hell it is. We spent over $200,000 on that wedding, then sue her. I'm sure a judge will be very interested in hearing about the bet that precipitated the engagement. I have witnesses, recordings, evidence that your son entered into the engagement under false pretenses for financial gain. Luca's smile was audible. Please, Gerald, try to take legal action. I would enjoy that very much. Another silence. When Gerald spoke again, his voice was ice. You're making an enemy of the wrong family, DeSantis. I've made enemies of worse families than yours. Most of them are now either dead or bankrupt. Would you like to guess which category you'll fall into if you come after Elena? Are you threatening me? I'm making a promise. Elena Marino is under my protection. Any attempt to harm her, legally, financially, physically, or reputationally, will be met with consequences you cannot imagine. Luca's voice was almost gentle. I've spent 2 decades building legitimate businesses, but I still remember how to dismantle empires, Gerald. Don't test me. The line went dead. Elena released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. You just threatened one of the richest families in the city? I made them a promise. There's a difference. Luca set down his phone. They'll try something anyway. Men like Gerald Whitmore don't respond well to boundaries. But when they do try, they'll fail, and they'll learn why people don't cross the DeSantis family. I don't want to cause a war. You didn't cause anything. Brandon caused this the moment he decided to treat you like property instead of a person. Luca finished his whiskey. I'm going to make some calls, set things in motion. You should rest. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow, we control the narrative. Elena wanted to ask what that meant, but exhaustion was suddenly overwhelming. The adrenaline that had carried her through the wedding and escape was fading, leaving her hollowed out and shaky. Mrs. Chen appeared as if summoned. Come, dear. I'll show you back to your room. Elena followed, her mind spinning. 24 hours ago, she'd been preparing for her wedding, believing she was on the verge of a fairy tale life. Now she was hiding in a mansion belonging to a man she'd just met, her engagement destroyed, her mother furious, her future completely uncertain. But as Mrs. Chen showed her to the guest suite and bid her goodnight, Elena realized something surprising. She didn't regret it. Not the objection, not the escape, not even the scandal, because for the first time in 3 months, she felt like herself again. She climbed into bed wearing borrowed pajamas in a borrowed room, her phone still buzzing with messages she didn't want to read. Sleep should have been impossible. Instead, she was unconscious within minutes. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and a moment of complete disorientation. Then memory crashed back. The wedding, the bet, Luca, everything. She checked her phone. 63 new messages. She scrolled through them, her stomach sinking. Brandon. This isn't over. Marcus. You made a huge mistake. Numbers she didn't recognize. Is it true you left Brandon Whitmore at the altar? And buried in the middle, one from her mother. We need to talk. Today. Elena was still staring at her phone when Mrs. Chen knocked with breakfast. Fresh fruit, yogurt, pastries that looked homemade. Mr. DeSantis is in a meeting but asked me to tell you he'll brief you at noon. Brief me on what? Mrs. Chen's smile was enigmatic. He'll explain. Elena ate mechanically, her mind churning. She showered, dressed in more borrowed clothes, designer labels she recognized from magazines, and found herself wandering the mansion. It was beautiful in daylight, full of art and antiques, but somehow not cold. This was a home, not just a showcase. She found herself in a room lined with photographs. Luca at various ages, a serious child, an intense young man, a powerful adult, and in several frames, a woman with dark hair and kind eyes. Isabella, Elena realized, the woman her father had died saving. She would have liked you. Elena spun. Luca stood in the doorway, wearing different clothes, but the same air of controlled authority. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to snoop. You weren't snooping. This is my private gallery. I brought you here. He moved to stand beside her, looking at Isabella's photograph. She had this way of seeing people, really seeing them. She would have seen what your father saw in you. What's that? Strength you don't know you have yet. Luca turned to face her. How did you sleep? Better than I expected. You said something about a briefing? Come, we have work to do. He led her back to the study, where several laptops were now set up alongside his original one. A woman in her 30s stood as they entered, sleek suit, sharp eyes, the bearing of someone used to command. Elena, this is Sophia Chen. No relation to Mrs. Chen, despite the shared surname. Sophia handles my public relations and crisis management. Sophia extended her hand. Miss Marino, pleasure to meet you, despite the circumstances. The circumstances being that I'm front page news? Page 3, actually, but trending on 7 platforms. Sophia pulled up images on one of the laptops. The narrative is currently split. Half the coverage is sympathetic. Brave bride escapes manipulative groom. And the other half is less kind. Social climber trades up. We're going to shift it entirely to the former. Elena sat down heavily. How? Press conference this afternoon. You tell your story, the bet, the manipulation, the deception. Luca provides evidence to back it up. By evening, Brandon Whitmore will be the villain and you'll be the survivor. I don't want to do a press conference. I know. Sophia's voice was gentle but firm. But if you don't control the narrative, someone else will. Right now, the Whitmores are scrambling to paint you as unstable, ungrateful, possibly mentally ill. Gerald's already had his lawyers send cease and desist letters to 3 news outlets for defamation. Defamation of who? Of Brandon. They're claiming our accusations are false and damaging. Luca's smile was cold. Which is why we're going to provide proof. Sophia? Sophia pulled up an audio file. One of the hotel staff, who happens to be on our payroll for unrelated reasons, heard the conversation you overheard. She recorded it. She pressed play. Elena heard Brandon's voice, crystal clear. $10,000 that I can make a nobody fall in love and drag her to the altar in 3 months. Easiest money I ever made. Hearing it again made Elena's chest constrict, but she forced herself to listen as Marcus's voice followed. She really has no idea? Brandon, please. Elena's so desperate to escape her pathetic life she'd believe anything. Sophia stopped the recording. We have 12 minutes of this. All admissible. All damning. Elena looked at Luca. You planned this. Even before the wedding, you had someone recording him. I had someone watching over you, Luca corrected. When she overheard the conversation, she made sure there was proof. Just in case we needed it. That's actually kind of terrifying. Welcome to how I protect people I care about. Luca's expression was unapologetic. The press conference is at 3. Sophia will prep you. You don't have to answer questions you're not comfortable with. But Elena, he leaned forward. If you do this, there's no going back. You'll be declaring war on the Whitmore family. They will retaliate. Let them, Elena said, surprising herself with the steel in her own voice. I'm done being quiet, done being grateful, done being the girl who should just accept whatever scraps she's given. Sophia grinned. I like her. So do I, Luca murmured. The next 3 hours were a blur of preparation. Sophia coached Elena on camera presence, message discipline, how to handle hostile questions. They practiced Elena's statement over and over until it was natural, confident, controlled. By the time they arrived at the venue, a hotel conference room that Sophia had somehow booked in under 2 hours, Elena felt as ready as she'd ever be. The room was packed with reporters, cameras everywhere, lights blinding, the sound of clicking keyboards and murmured conversations creating a steady buzz. Elena sat at a table with Luca on one side and Sophia on the other. The buzz quieted as Sophia stood. Thank you all for coming. We'll have a brief statement, then take limited questions. She nodded to Elena. Elena looked out at the sea of faces and cameras, took a breath, and began. 2 days ago, I was supposed to marry Brandon Whitmore. I believed I was in love. I believed he loved me. I believed we were building a future together. Her voice was steady. Then, 1 hour before the ceremony, I overheard Brandon and his friends discussing the truth. Our relationship was a bet, $10,000 that he could make a nobody fall in love and get her to the altar in 3 months. The marriage itself was a means to access his trust fund, nothing more. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. I walked away from that wedding because I deserve better than being someone's financial transaction. I deserve better than being called desperate and pathetic by the man who claimed to love me. Every woman deserves better than that. Elena looked directly into the nearest camera. So, yes, I left Brandon Whitmore at the altar, and I'd do it again, because self-respect is worth more than any ring. The room erupted with questions. Sophia fielded them expertly, allowing only 3. Ms. Marino, what proof do you have of this alleged bet? Sophia played the audio. The room went silent as Brandon's voice filled the space, every damning word crystal clear. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Mr. DeSantis, what's your relationship with Miss Marino? Luca's answer was calm, measured. Elena's father saved someone I loved many years ago. I'm simply returning the favor by ensuring his daughter isn't victimized by a man who sees women as assets rather than people. Are you two romantically involved? Next question, Sophia said firmly. They wrapped up 10 minutes later, leaving through a side entrance as reporters shouted more questions. In the car, Elena slumped against the seat, exhausted. You did well, Luca said. I feel like I just jumped off a cliff. You did, but now you're flying. He showed her his phone. It's already going viral. #bet. Not a bride is trending. Public opinion is shifting. By the time they returned to the estate, Elena's phone was exploding with new messages. But mixed in with the hate and the curiosity were new voices. Women sharing their own stories of manipulation. People offering support. Strangers saying they were proud of her courage. And buried in all of it, one message from her mother. I'm watching the news. We need to talk. Tomorrow. Please. Elena showed it to Luca. She didn't say she was proud, or that she understood, just that we need to talk. It's a start, Luca said gently. Give her time. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She wandered the mansion until she found Luca in his study, still working despite the late hour. Can't sleep? He asked. Too much adrenaline. Elena sat in the chair across from him. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why do you really care? I know you owed my father, but this, the press conference, the protection, all of it, it's more than just repaying a debt. Luca was quiet for a long moment. When Isabella died, I thought I'd failed her, failed to protect her, failed to give her the life she deserved. He met Elena's eyes. Your father gave me 3 more years with her. 3 years I never would have had, and I've spent the 14 years since trying to figure out how to deserve that gift. By protecting me? By making sure Antonio Marino's sacrifice meant something, by ensuring his daughter has the freedom to choose her own path, not one dictated by desperation or manipulation. Luca's voice softened. You remind me of her, you know, Isabella. That same core of steel wrapped in compassion, that same refusal to accept injustice quietly. I don't feel strong. You walked away from a fairy tale in front of 300 people. You told your truth on national television. You declared war on one of the most powerful families in the city. Luca smiled. Elena, you're stronger than you know. She wanted to believe him, almost did. But as she finally drifted off to sleep in the early hours of morning, one thought kept circulating. Brandon Whitmore wasn't done yet, and neither was his family. The retaliation came 48 hours after the press conference, swift and vicious as a snake strike. Elena woke to Sophia's urgent knock on her bedroom door. Turn on the news, now! She fumbled for the remote, clicking through channels until she found it. Her own face stared back at her from the screen, but the headline made her stomach drop. Elena Marino. Troubled past revealed, psychiatric holds, theft accusations, family history of deception. What? No! Elena's hand shook as the anchor continued speaking. Sources close to the Marino family reveal a pattern of instability and dishonesty. Court documents show Elena Marino was placed on psychiatric hold twice during her teenage years. Former employers report missing cash and inventory. And questions remain about her late father's involvement with organized crime before his death. The screen cut to an interview with someone Elena had never seen before, identified as former manager, Riverside Cafe. Elena was always a bit off, the woman said, her expression concerned. Sweet girl, but you could tell something wasn't right. Things would go missing when she worked. Small amounts of cash, mostly. We never pressed charges because we felt sorry for her situation. This is insane, Elena whispered. I worked at Riverside for 6 months and left on good terms. I never stole anything, and psychiatric holds? I've never even been to therapy. Sophia's expression was grim. It's all fabricated. The Whitmores are playing dirty. But people will believe this. They'll think I'm crazy, that I'm a liar. Not when we prove it's false. Luca appeared in the doorway, his phone pressed to his ear. Marcus, I need everything on the Whitmores' legal team, specifically who they're using for opposition research. He paused, listening. Good. And find out who that manager really is. Nobody goes on television to trash a former employee unless they're being paid. Another pause. Excellent. I'll hold. He lowered the phone. Sophia's already drafting our response. We'll have documentation proving those psychiatric claims are fabricated by end of day. The theft allegations, too. But the damage is already done, Elena said, her voice breaking. Everyone's going to think everyone thought you were a gold digger 48 hours ago, Luca interrupted, his tone sharp enough to cut through her panic. Now half the country is on your side. This is what war looks like, Elena. They strike, we counterstrike. That's how it works. I didn't want a war. But you're in one anyway. He softened slightly. I know this is terrifying. I know it feels overwhelming. But you're not alone in this fight. Mrs. Chen appeared with tea Elena didn't want and a worried expression. Your mother called the house line. She's quite upset. Of course she was. Elena took the tea with trembling hands. Did she say what she wanted? She said you need to stop this immediately, that you're making things worse, that you should apologize to the Whitmores and beg them to make it stop. Elena's laugh was hollow. Apologize for what? For not letting myself be used? She's scared, Luca said quietly. The Whitmores are powerful. Your mother's worried they'll destroy both of you. Will they? They'll try. Luca's phone buzzed. He listened for a moment, his expression hardening. Send it to me. He hung up and turned to Sophia. The manager from Riverside? Her name is Jennifer Cole. She never worked at Riverside Cafe. She's an actress the Whitmores hired to play the role. You're joking, Elena breathed. I wish I were. Sophia was already typing furiously on her laptop. This is actually good for us. If we can prove they fabricated even one element of their story, it discredits everything else. What about the psychiatric records? Also fabricated, but harder to prove. Medical records have privacy protections, so we can't just demand the hospitals confirm or deny, but Sophia's smile was sharp. We can have your actual medical records submitted to prove you've never been institutionalized anywhere. I don't have medical records. I couldn't afford to go to the doctor growing up. Even better, we'll get affidavits from the hospitals they claimed held you. When they can't produce any record of your admission, it proves they lied. Sophia looked at Luca. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. Let it get ugly. Luca's voice was ice. The Whitmores want to play in the mud? Fine. But they're going to learn why that's a mistake. Within hours, Sophia had released a statement challenging every claim the Whitmores had made. By evening, reporters were questioning the authenticity of the psychiatric records. By midnight, someone had identified Jennifer Cole as a struggling actress with a resume full of commercial work. But the damage was spreading in other directions too. Elena's phone kept buzzing with messages from people she'd known in her old life. Some supportive, some confused, some outright hostile. A former coworker from the cafe. Is it true you stole from the register? A classmate from high school. Always knew there was something off about you. And then, buried in the notifications, a message from Brandon himself. You should have just married me. This could have been so much simpler. Now you've made it personal. Elena showed it to Luca. His expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. He's escalating. What does that mean? It means he's going to do something desperate. Luca forwarded the message to someone. I'm increasing security around the estate. No one gets in or out without clearance. You think he'd actually try something physical? I think cornered animals bite. Luca met her gaze. The press conference embarrassed him. Your refusal to back down humiliated him. Men like Brandon don't handle humiliation well. That night, Elena couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She paced her room, reading and rereading the vicious comments spreading across social media. The narrative was splintering in a dozen directions. Some people believed her, others thought she was unstable. Still others thought the whole thing was a publicity stunt. She was staring out the window at the dark gardens when her phone rang. Her mother. Elena answered, Mama. Have you seen what they're saying about you? Rosa's voice was strained, frantic. About our family? About your father? I've seen it. They're calling him a criminal, Elena. Saying he was involved with drug trafficking, money laundering, saying that's why he died, that it wasn't a heart attack at all. Elena closed her eyes. The Whitmores were getting closer to the truth than they realized. Mama, you need to ignore it. It's all lies designed to hurt me. It's working. I had reporters at my apartment today, at my work. People I've known for years are asking me questions, looking at me differently. Rosa's voice broke. This needs to stop. You need to make this stop. How? By apologizing to Brandon? By admitting I was wrong? By ending this war before it destroys us both? I can't do that, Mama. I won't. Then you're choosing pride over family. The words were sharp, bitter. Your father would be ashamed. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Papa died protecting someone from bad people. Luca told me the truth. Papa was a hero, and I'm not going to let the Whitmores rewrite that story just because it's convenient for them. Silence. Then quietly, what are you talking about? Papa didn't die of a heart attack. He died saving a woman from being killed. He fought 3 armed men and took bullets so she could escape. And Luca DeSantis has been taking care of us ever since because he owed Papa that debt. Rosa's breathing was ragged. How do you know this? Because Luca told me. Because he has proof. Because everything you thought you knew about Papa's death was a lie designed to protect us. Elena's voice softened. Mama, I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But I can't spend my life being grateful for scraps and looking the other way when powerful people lie. That's not who Papa raised me to be. Your father raised you to survive, to be smart, to know when you're outmatched. Maybe I'm not outmatched. Maybe I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Rosa made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. With a man you barely know, fighting a family that could crush you without thinking twice? With someone who sees me as a person worth protecting, yes. Elena wiped at her own tears. I love you, Mama, but I'm not backing down. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Rosa spoke again, her voice was heavy with resignation. Then I hope you know what you're doing, mija, because I can't watch you destroy yourself. She hung up. Elena stood there holding the phone, feeling like she'd just lost something precious. Her relationship with her mother had always been complicated, love mixed with obligation, closeness shadowed by the things they never talked about. But this felt different. This felt like a fracture that might not heal. A soft knock. Luca stood in the doorway, his expression gentle. I heard raised voices. My mother thinks I'm being self-destructive. Are you? Elena considered it. Maybe, but it feels right in a way nothing with Brandon ever did. Luca stepped into the room. For what it's worth, I think your father would be proud. Not because you're fighting, but because you're refusing to be diminished. You didn't know him well enough to say that. I knew him well enough to know he threw himself in front of bullets for a stranger. That's not the action of a man who believed in accepting injustice quietly. Luca moved to stand beside her at the window. He saw someone in danger and chose to act, even though it cost him everything. You saw yourself being used and chose to act, even though it cost you everything you thought you wanted. The courage is the same. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like burning my life down. Sometimes you have to burn down the old life to make room for the new one. Luca's voice was quiet. When Isabella died, I thought my world had ended. In a way, it had. The life I'd imagined, marriage, children, growing old together, all of it went up in flames. And for a long time, I was just empty. What changed? I realized that honoring her memory didn't mean staying frozen in grief. It meant living with the same fierce integrity she'd had, fighting for the things she would have fought for, protecting the people she would have protected. He turned to look at Elena, like a 12-year-old girl whose father had just died, saving the woman I loved. Elena's breath caught. You've been watching over me since I was 12? Watching over, yes. Not watching. I never invaded your privacy, but I made sure you had what you needed. Made sure you were safe. Made sure that if you ever needed help, someone would be there. Luca's smile was sad. I couldn't bring your father back, but I could make sure his sacrifice wasn't meaningless. And now I'm making sure his daughter doesn't get crushed by people who see her as nothing more than an obstacle. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the night. Elena felt something shifting inside her, the terror slowly hardening into something else. Not quite confidence, not yet, but determination. The Whitmores had tried to break her with lies. When that didn't work, they'd tried to paint her as unstable, criminal, beneath contempt. But she was still standing, still fighting, still here. The next morning brought another bombshell. Elena woke to Sophia bursting into her room without knocking, laptop in hand. You need to see this, now! The screen showed a press conference. Brandon stood at a podium looking appropriately sorrowful, flanked by his parents and what appeared to be a lawyer. I want to start by saying how deeply sorry I am for the pain this situation has caused, Brandon began, his voice heavy with practiced regret. The truth is, Elena and I had a complicated relationship. I cared for her deeply, but there were issues, serious issues, that I tried to help her work through. Elena's stomach turned. He's doubling down. It gets worse, Sophia muttered. On screen, Brandon continued. Elena struggled with the pressure of entering my family's social circle. She had difficulty distinguishing between reality and her own insecurities. When she overheard a private conversation between my friends and me, a conversation taken completely out of context, she spiraled. I tried to help her, tried to get her to see reason, but she disappeared with Mr. DeSantis before we could talk. That lying... Elena couldn't finish the sentence. Patricia Whitmore stepped forward. We bear no ill will toward Elena. We hope she gets the help she needs. But we cannot stand by while Mr. DeSantis manipulates a vulnerable young woman for his own purposes. The lawyer spoke next, reading from a prepared statement. We are filing a lawsuit against Luca DeSantis for alienation of affection, interference with contractual relations, and defamation. We are also filing a police report regarding Miss Marino's welfare, as we believe she may be under undue influence. Sophia closed the laptop. They're claiming you're being held against your will. That's insane. That's strategy. Luca appeared in the doorway, his expression dark. They're trying to paint me as the villain and you as my victim. If they can convince people you're not making your own choices, everything you've said becomes suspect. So what do? We prove them wrong. Luca turned to Sophia. How fast can we organize a live interview? Something unscripted where Elena can speak freely? I can have the major networks bidding within the hour. Do it. Luca looked at Elena. Are you ready to tell your full story? Everything? The bet? The manipulation? What you heard Brandon say? Why you're here? All of it. Elena's heart hammered. A live interview meant no safety net, no ability to retract or clarify. Every word would be permanent, dissected, weaponized. But it also meant control. Her voice, her truth, her terms. I'm ready. By noon, Sophia had negotiated a primetime slot with the country's most watched news program. The interview would be conducted by Margaret Chen, a journalist known for her tough but fair questioning. Live, unedited, no questions off limits. The afternoon was a blur of preparation. Sophia coached Elena on maintaining composure, on not letting hostile questions rattle her, on speaking clearly and confidently. Luca provided documentation, the audio recording of Brandon's bet, text messages showing his manipulation, evidence of the fabricated psychiatric records. Remember, Sophia said as they drove to the studio, you're not defending yourself, you're stating facts. There's a difference. What if I freeze? What if I cry? Then you freeze or cry. You're human. That's not weakness. Sophia squeezed her hand. Just tell the truth. That's all you need to do. The studio was smaller than Elena expected, dominated by 2 chairs and harsh lighting. Margaret Chen was already there, reviewing notes. She looked up as Elena entered, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp. Miss Marino, thank you for agreeing to this. Thank you for having me. I should warn you, I'm going to ask difficult questions. The public deserves the full story. I understand. Margaret gestured to the chairs. Then let's begin. The countdown felt eternal. 5, 4, 3, 2. Margaret turned to the camera, her voice smooth and professional. Good evening. I'm Margaret Chen, and tonight we have an exclusive interview with Elena Marino, the woman at the center of what's being called the scandal of the year. Miss Marino, thank you for joining us. Thank you for having me. Let's start with the most basic question. Did you leave Brandon Whitmore at the altar because you were having a breakdown, as his family claims? Elena took a breath. No. I left Brandon Whitmore at the altar because 1 hour before the ceremony, I overheard him telling his friends that our entire relationship was a bet. $10,000 that he could make a nobody fall in love and drag her to the altar in 3 months. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? I do. Elena nodded to Sophia off camera. We have audio. The recording played. The studio went quiet as Brandon's voice filled the space, every cruel word damning. When it ended, Margaret's expression had shifted slightly. That's quite clear. How did you feel hearing that? Devastated, humiliated, like everything I'd believed about my life for 3 months had been a lie. Elena's voice was steady. Brandon told me I was special, that he saw something in me no one else did. But the truth was, he saw someone desperate enough to be easy to control. And Luca DeSantis? The Whitmores claim he's manipulating you. Are you here of your own free will? Completely. Luca's connection to me is through my father, who saved someone Luca loved many years ago. He came to that wedding to warn me about Brandon. When I chose to leave, he offered protection, nothing more. Protection from what? From exactly what's happening now. The Whitmores are powerful. They're used to controlling narratives. When I refused to be quiet, they tried to destroy my credibility with fabricated psychiatric records and false theft allegations. Margaret leaned forward. You're saying those records are fake? I'm saying I've never been institutionalized in my life. I grew up poor. We couldn't afford mental health care even if I'd needed it. The Whitmores hired an actress to pretend she was my former manager. They fabricated documents to make me look unstable, all because I refused to be used. That's another serious accusation. Can you prove it? Sophia stepped forward with a folder. Hospital records from every facility the Whitmores claimed held Miss Marino. None have any record of her admission. We also have the actress's IMDb page and bank records showing a large payment from Whitmore family accounts 3 days before her television appearance. Margaret flipped through the documents, her expression tightening. These are explosive allegations. They're facts, Elena said quietly. I'm not here to wage war on the Whitmores. I'm here to tell my truth. Brandon made me part of his game. I chose to stop playing. Even though it cost you everything? Your relationship, your mother's approval, your privacy? Even though, Elena met Margaret's gaze, because some prices are too high, and my self-respect was one of them. Your mother has publicly stated she wants you to apologize and end this. What would you say to her? Elena's throat tightened. I'd say I love her. I'd say I understand she's scared, but I'd also say that I can't apologize for refusing to be treated as less than human. Papa didn't raise me to accept that, and I won't. You mention your father. There have been allegations about his past, about connections to organized crime. My father worked in import-export. What he didn't know was that his employer was involved in illegal activities. When he discovered the truth, he tried to get out. He died protecting an innocent woman from being killed by the people who ran that operation. Elena's voice was firm. He was a hero, not a criminal. And the Whitmores know that, but they're twisting the truth to hurt me. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Miss Marino, what do you want people to understand about your situation? I want them to understand that this isn't about revenge or money or fame. This is about refusing to be someone's punchline, someone's bet, someone's transaction. Elena felt tears building but didn't try to hide them. I thought Brandon was saving me, but the truth is, I didn't need saving. I needed to save myself. And that's exactly what I did. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. Margaret pressed hard on difficult questions about Luca's past, about Elena's future plans, about whether she regretted her choice. Elena answered everything honestly, holding nothing back. By the time they wrapped, she felt wrung out, but somehow lighter. In the car back to the estate, Sophia was glowing. That was perfect, absolutely perfect. You came across as credible, sympathetic, strong. The footage of Brandon's recording combined with your testimony, it's devastating for them. What happens now? Now we wait for the fallout. Luca's voice was grim. The Whitmores won't take this lying down. He was right. Within hours, social media had exploded. The interview was trending across every platform. Public opinion was swinging hard in Elena's favor. Reporters were questioning the Whitmores' claims. Legal analysts were dissecting their lawsuit and finding it weak. But Brandon's response came through different channels. At 2 a.m, Elena's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. The message contained a photo. Elena's apartment building, with a timestamp from 30 minutes ago. Below it, you can run to DeSantis' mansion, but your mother can't hide there too. Keep talking, and she pays the price. Elena's blood ran cold. She was out of bed and running before she'd fully processed the threat, bursting into Luca's study where he was still working despite the late hour. They threatened my mother. Luca took the phone, his expression darkening as he read. When was this sent? Just now, 2 minutes ago. He was already dialing. Marcus, I need a team at Rosa Marino's apartment. Now. Full protection detail. Pause. I don't care if you have to pull them from other assignments. Move. He hung up and turned to Elena. Get dressed. We're going to get your mother. But if this is a trap, then we spring it. But I'm not leaving Rosa unprotected. Luca's voice was steel. The Whitmores just made their biggest mistake. 20 minutes later, they were in an SUV with tinted windows, Luca driving with the controlled precision of someone who'd done this before. Elena's hands were shaking as she tried calling her mother. No answer. She's probably asleep, Luca said. It's 2:30 in the morning. Or something's already happened. Don't think like that. My people are already there. They pulled up to Elena's childhood apartment building, run down, badly lit, the kind of place that had been slowly crumbling for decades. 2 black SUVs were already parked outside, and Elena recognized Marcus from the wedding standing guard at the entrance. "Third floor is secure," he reported to Luca. "Miss Marino is inside, shaken but unharmed." Elena ran for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. The apartment door was open, her mother sitting on the worn couch in her bathrobe, looking small and frightened and older than Elena had ever seen her. "Mama." Rosa looked up, her eyes red. "They came to my door. 2 men. Said they had a message for you." Her voice shook. "Said if you don't stop talking, stop fighting them, they'll make sure everyone knows I lied about your father's death, that I was complicit in covering up his criminal activities." "That's not true. I know it's not true, but Elena, these people, they can make anyone believe anything. They can destroy us." Rosa grabbed Elena's hands. "Please, please, mija, just stop. Apologize. Make this end." Luca appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Marino, you're not safe here. Pack a bag. You're coming with us." Rosa looked at him with distrust and fear. "I'm not going anywhere with you. You've done enough damage." The damage was done by the Whitmores when they sent men to threaten you at 2 a.m, Luca said calmly. "You can stay here and wait for them to come back, or you can let me protect you the way I should have been doing all along. Your choice." "Mama, please." Elena squeezed her mother's hands. "I know you're angry with me. I know you think I'm making everything worse, but I need to know you're safe." Rosa looked between them, her expression torn. Finally, she sagged. "Let me pack." 15 minutes later, they were back in the SUV with Rosa's hastily packed suitcase. She sat stiffly in the back seat, not looking at Luca, barely looking at Elena. The drive to the estate was silent and tense. Mrs. Chen was waiting when they arrived, unfazed by the early hour. "I've prepared a room. This way, Mrs. Marino." After her mother had been settled, Elena found Luca in his study, on the phone with someone speaking rapid Italian. He switched to English when he saw her. "Yes, both of them. I want names by morning." He hung up. "The men who visited your mother have been identified. They're independent contractors the Whitmores have used before for intimidation." "This is insane. They're actually threatening violence?" "They're desperate. The interview damaged them badly. Their lawsuit is falling apart. Public opinion has turned against them, so they're escalating." Luca's expression was grim. "This was always a possibility. That's why I had people watching your mother's building." "You knew they might target her?" "I knew desperate people do desperate things." He poured himself a drink. "The question now is how we respond." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we have evidence of witness intimidation. criminal threats. We could go to the police. But that takes time. Legal processes move slowly, and the Whitmores have lawyers who can delay and obfuscate for months. Luca's smile was cold, or we handle it my way. Which is? I make them understand that there are consequences for threatening people under my protection. Consequences that won't wait for court dates and legal briefs. Elena should have been frightened by the edge in his voice. Instead, she felt something else. Relief that someone was finally willing to fight as dirty as the Whitmores had been fighting all along. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the beginning. Luca finished his drink. I'm going to remind the Whitmores why smart people don't make enemies of my family. Dawn broke over the city like a warning. Elena stood at the window of her guest room, watching the sky turn from black to gray to gold, and wondered what Luca meant by handling things his way. She dozed fitfully for maybe 2 hours, her mind too wired to truly rest. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Chen, carrying a breakfast tray despite the early hour. Mr. DeSantis thought you might be awake. He asked me to tell you there's a meeting at 8. Your presence is requested but not required. What kind of meeting? Mrs. Chen's expression was carefully neutral. The kind where decisions get made. Elena showered and dressed quickly, choosing a simple black dress from the wardrobe that had somehow appeared in her closet. Luca's doing, no doubt. Everything fit perfectly, which should have been comforting, but instead felt like evidence of how thoroughly he'd anticipated her needs before she even knew them herself. She found her mother in the breakfast room, picking at toast and looking like she hadn't slept at all. Rosa glanced up when Elena entered, her expression guarded. Did you sleep? Elena asked. How could I sleep? Strange house, strange people, my whole life falling apart. Rosa set down her toast. Elena, we need to talk. I know you're angry. I'm terrified. Rosa's voice cracked. Those men who came to my door, they knew things. About your father, about me. Things I've never told anyone. Elena sat down across from her mother. What kind of things? Rosa was quiet for a long moment, her fingers twisting the napkin in her lap. Your father told me the truth before he died. Not all of it, but enough. He said if anything happened to him, I should take the story about the heart attack and never question it. He made me promise to keep you safe by keeping you ignorant. Mama, I've spent 17 years lying to you, lying to myself, pretending Antonio was just a warehouse worker who got unlucky. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. But those men last night, they said, if I don't convince you to back down, they'll tell everyone the truth. That I knew what Antonio was involved in, that I benefited from dirty money, that I'm as guilty as he was. But Papa wasn't guilty of anything. Luca told me, Luca DeSantis has his own version of the truth, Rosa interrupted, but the Whitmores will have another version, and their version will be the one the public believes because they have the money and power to make it believable. Elena reached for her mother's hand. So what do you want me to do? Apologize to Brandon? Admit I was wrong? Let him win? I want you to survive. I want us both to survive. Rosa gripped Elena's fingers hard. Whatever Luca DeSantis is planning, it's going to make things worse. Can't you see that? The more you fight, the more vicious they become. This needs to end before someone gets truly hurt. Someone already got hurt, me. Brandon used me, lied to me, made me part of his sick game. And when I refused to play along, he tried to destroy my reputation. Now he's threatening you. Elena's voice rose. When does it end, Mama? When I'm broken enough? When I'm grateful enough? When I've learned my place? When you're alive and whole and not crushed under the weight of a war, you can't win. The sharp voice cut through their argument. Luca stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Marino, I understand your fear, but with respect, your daughter is already in this war, whether she continues fighting or not. The Whitmores won't stop if she apologizes. They'll see it as weakness and press harder. Rosa stood, her whole body rigid with tension. You don't know that. Actually, I do. I've been dealing with men like the Whitmores my entire life. Luca stepped into the room. They respect power and they respect consequences, nothing else. Elena backing down now won't save either of you. It will just make you easier targets. And what's your solution? More press conferences? More public battles? Putting my daughter on television to be picked apart by millions of strangers? My solution is to end this permanently. Today. Luca checked his watch. In fact, that's what the meeting is about. Elena, if you're joining us, we start in 10 minutes. He left before either of them could respond. Rosa turned to Elena, her expression pleading. Don't go to that meeting. Don't let him pull you deeper into whatever he's planning. But Elena was already standing. I need to hear what he has to say. Elena, Mama, I love you, but I'm not a child anymore. I'm not someone who needs to be protected from the truth. Elena's voice softened. Papa understood that sometimes you have to fight. That's why he stepped in when Isabella was in danger. He could have walked away. He chose not to. And I'm making the same choice. She left her mother sitting there and followed the path Luca had taken to his study. The door was open, revealing a room that had transformed overnight into something resembling a war room. Multiple screens showed news feeds, financial data, what looked like surveillance footage. Sophia was there, along with Marcus and two other people Elena didn't recognize. A woman in her 40s with steel gray hair and a young man who looked barely out of college. Luca gestured to an empty chair. Elena, good. We're just getting started. He nodded to the woman. This is Catherine Reeves, former federal prosecutor. And this is David Park, our financial analyst. Together, they've spent the night building a case against the Whitmores. Catherine pulled up a document on one of the screens. Miss Marino, what I'm about to show you is the result of some very aggressive investigation. Before we proceed, I need to know, are you comfortable with us using information obtained through methods that aren't entirely conventional? Elena looked at Luca. What does that mean? It means we hacked some things, David said cheerfully. Financial records, mostly. Email servers, private communications. All technically illegal, but also completely damning. If we release this information, we can't use it in court, Catherine clarified. But we can use it in the court of public opinion, and sometimes that's more effective. Elena's heart hammered. What did you find? Catherine clicked through screens. Brandon Whitmore has made the same bet 6 times in the past 8 years. Different women, different amounts, but the same basic structure. Find someone vulnerable, manipulate them into an engagement, access his trust fund, then divorce quietly with a prenup that leaves them with almost nothing. 6 times? Elena felt sick. 6 times. We have documentation of all of them. Text messages where he brags about it, financial records showing the trust fund transfers, even a few recorded phone calls where he coaches his friends on how to run the same scam. Catherine's expression was grim. You're not his first victim, Miss Marino. You're just the first one who fought back. David pulled up another screen. And it gets better. The Whitmore family's fortune? Not as solid as they pretend. Gerald Whitmore has been borrowing heavily against their assets to maintain appearances. The shipping company is hemorrhaging money. They're months away from bankruptcy if they can't secure new capital. Which explains why Brandon was so desperate to access his trust fund, Sophia added. He needed the money to bail out his father's company. You weren't just a bet, Elena. You were a financial necessity. Elena tried to process it all. 6 women, 6 manipulations, 6 hearts broken for money. Who were the others? The other women he did this to? Catherine hesitated. That's complicated. Most of them signed NDAs as part of their settlement. They can't talk without facing legal consequences. But they could talk if the NDAs were proven to be fraudulent, Luca said quietly. If we can demonstrate that the contracts were obtained through deception, they become void. You want to find them, Elena realized. The other women, get them to come forward. We already found them. Marcus pulled up photos on another screen. 6 women, all around Elena's age, all with the same look of someone who'd been through something devastating. 3 are willing to talk if we can protect them legally. The other 3 are too scared of the Whitmores' retaliation. Elena stared at the faces. What happened to them after Brandon dumped them? 1 had a breakdown and was hospitalized. 2 left the city entirely. 1 attempted suicide. Catherine's voice was gentle. Brandon Whitmore isn't just a liar, Miss Marino. He's a predator who's been operating with impunity because his victims were too scared or ashamed to speak up. The room fell silent. Elena felt rage building in her chest. Hot, clean, righteous. So we expose him. All of it. The bets, the financial desperation, the pattern of abuse. We show the world exactly what Brandon Whitmore is. It's not that simple, Luca said. If we release everything at once, the Whitmores will cry foul. They'll claim we fabricated evidence, hacked their systems illegally, violated privacy laws. They might be right, and a good lawyer could get most of this thrown out as inadmissible. Then what do? Luca smiled, and it was not a kind expression. We give them a choice. Back off completely, or we burn their empire to the ground. Catherine pulled up a drafted document. This is a proposed settlement. The Whitmores issue a public apology, drop all legal action against you and Mr. DeSantis, and make a significant charitable donation to organizations supporting domestic abuse survivors. In exchange, we don't release the evidence we've gathered. That's it? They apologize, and it's over? They also agree to never contact you again, never speak about you publicly, and Brandon enters a court-monitored treatment program for his documented pattern of manipulation and abuse. And if they refuse? Then we release everything, Sophia said. The bets, the financial records, the other women's stories, all of it. We coordinate with major news outlets for maximum impact. By the time we're done, the Whitmore name will be synonymous with fraud and abuse. David grinned. I've already got the social media campaign ready. It'll trend worldwide within an hour of release. Elena looked around the room at these people who'd spent all night building a weapon designed to protect her. Why are you all doing this? I'm nobody. Just some girl who got mixed up with the wrong guy. You're the daughter of a man who saved someone I loved, Luca said quietly. That makes you family. And I protect family. Catherine's expression softened. And you're a woman who was brave enough to walk away when most people would have stayed quiet and suffered. That deserves protection. Plus, Marcus added with a slight smile, the Whitmores are assholes who've gotten away with too much for too long. This is personally satisfying. Elena felt something loosening in her chest. These people barely knew her, but they'd gone to war on her behalf. Not because she was special or important, but because it was the right thing to do. When do we make the offer? This morning. In person. Luca stood. Marcus has arranged a meeting at a neutral location. Gerald Whitmore thinks we're coming to negotiate a quiet settlement. He's expecting us to roll over. He's going to be disappointed, Sophia said with satisfaction. 2 hours later, Elena found herself in a private room at one of the city's most expensive hotels. The Whitmores were already there when they arrived. Gerald looking imperious, Patricia tight-lipped with fury, Brandon pale and nervous. Their lawyer, a man named Harrison Bell with a reputation for ruthlessness, sat between them like a barrier. This is highly irregular, Bell began. My clients agreed to this meeting in good faith. Your clients sent thugs to threaten a 60-year-old woman at 2 a.m, Luca interrupted, his voice ice. Let's not pretend this is about good faith. Gerald's face reddened. That's a serious accusation. It's a documented fact. We have the men's identities. We have their connection to you. We have recordings of the threats they made. Luca sat down, his posture relaxed, but his eyes lethal. So, let's dispense with the theater and get to business. Catherine opened her briefcase and slid a document across the table. This is our proposed settlement. I suggest you read it carefully. Bell picked it up, his expression growing darker as he read. Gerald leaned over his shoulder, and Elena watched the color drain from his face. This is extortion, Bell finally said. This is mercy, Luca corrected. You have 48 hours to agree to the terms. Public apology, cessation of all legal action, charitable donation, treatment for Brandon, and a permanent order of no contact with Elena or her mother. And if we refuse? Patricia's voice was sharp. Sophia set her laptop on the table and turned it so they could see the screen. Then we release this. All of it. The 6 previous women Brandon manipulated, the financial records showing your company is on the verge of bankruptcy, the evidence that Brandon has been running the same scam for nearly a decade, your son's text messages bragging about his conquests, all of it. Brandon made a strangled sound. You can't. Those are private. They were private, David said cheerfully. Now they're leverage. Gerald stood abruptly. You have no right. We have every right to defend ourselves against your attacks. Luca's voice didn't rise, but something in it made Gerald sit back down. You came after Elena with lies and fabrications. You threatened her mother. You tried to destroy her reputation. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? You're bluffing, Bell said, but he sounded uncertain. Am I? Luca pulled out his phone and showed them something. This is the draft of tomorrow's headline. Brandon Whitmore's pattern of manipulation. 6 women tell their stories. 3 major outlets are ready to run it. We're just waiting for the word. The room fell silent. Elena watched the Whitmore's faces cycle through denial, anger, fear, calculation. This was what power looked like when it was cornered. Finally, Bell spoke. We need time to discuss this privately. You have 15 minutes, Luca said. Use them wisely. The Whitmores and their lawyer retreated to a corner of the room, their voices low and urgent. Elena could see Brandon arguing, Patricia looking increasingly furious, Gerald's face growing redder. They're going to refuse, Elena whispered to Luca. They're too proud to back down. Then they're fools. Luca's expression was calm. But either way, this ends today. The 15 minutes stretched into 20. Finally, the Whitmores returned to the table, Gerald looking like he'd aged 10 years. We need to see the evidence, Bell said. Before we agree to anything, we need to verify that you actually have what you claim. Catherine pulled out her phone. I'm sending you a sample. 1 previous victim statement, financial records from one of the trust fund transfers, and a single text exchange between Brandon and his friends planning the bet with Elena. Bell's phone buzzed. He read, his face growing pale. He showed the screen to Gerald, who closed his eyes briefly. This is authentic, Bell finally admitted. All of it is authentic, Catherine said, and there's 100 times more where that came from. Brandon suddenly stood, his chair scraping loudly. This is insane. You're acting like I committed some crime. You did commit a crime, Catherine interrupted. Multiple crimes, actually. Fraud, emotional manipulation, witness intimidation. We have enough evidence to pursue criminal charges if we wanted to. Then why don't you? Patricia demanded. Because Elena isn't interested in revenge, Luca said quietly. She's interested in justice. There's a difference. Take the settlement, apologize, make amends, move on with your lives. And if we refuse, Gerald's voice was hoarse, then we destroy you. Professionally, financially, socially. By the time we're done, the Whitmore name will be toxic. Your company will collapse. Brandon will be unemployable, and all of it will be public record forever. Luca leaned back. That's not a threat. It's a promise. The silence stretched out, taut as a wire. Elena could see the calculation happening behind Gerald's eyes, weighing options, measuring costs, trying to find an angle. We need 24 hours, Belle finally said. You have 12, Luca countered. Noon tomorrow. Agreement in writing, or we release everything. Belle looked at Gerald, who gave a tight nod. Noon tomorrow. They filed out, Brandon shooting Elena a look of pure hatred as he passed. The door closed behind them, and Elena released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. They'll take it, Marcus said confidently. Gerald's too smart to let his pride destroy everything. And if he's not that smart, Elena asked, then tomorrow gets very interesting, Sophia said with a grin. But as they returned to the estate, Elena couldn't shake a sense of unease. The Whitmores had looked cornered, yes, but cornered animals were dangerous. She found her mother in the garden, sitting on a bench surrounded by roses. Rosa looked up as Elena approached, her expression wary. So, what happened at your meeting? Elena sat down beside her and explained everything. The evidence they'd gathered, the other women Brandon had victimized, the settlement they'd offered. Rosa listened in silence. When Elena finished, she was quiet for a long moment. 6 women, she finally said. He did this to 6 other women before you. Yes. And you're trying to stop him from doing it to a 7th. I'm trying to make sure he faces consequences for what he's done. Rosa turned to look at her daughter, and Elena was surprised to see tears in her eyes. Your father would be proud of you, not for the fighting, but for the protecting. She reached for Elena's hand. I've been so scared. I forgot that sometimes fear is the wrong response. Sometimes you have to be brave even when it's terrifying. Mama, I'm still angry with you for dragging me into this. For upending my life, for making me face truths I've spent 17 years avoiding. Rosa squeezed her hand. But I'm also proud. You're stronger than I ever was. Elena felt tears building. I don't feel strong. That's because you're in the middle of it. When you look back, you'll see. Rosa stood, brushing off her dress. Now, when do we find out if these horrible people accept your terms? Noon tomorrow. Then we wait. Rosa started walking back toward the house, then paused. Elena, if they don't accept, if this turns into the war Luca is preparing for, I'm staying. I'm not running. We face it together. Elena caught up to her mother and hugged her fiercely. For the first time since the wedding, she felt like they were on the same side. That night, Elena couldn't sleep again. She wandered the mansion's halls, eventually finding herself in Luca's study. He was there, as she'd somehow known he would be, staring at his laptop with an expression of deep concentration. Can't sleep? He asked without looking up. Too much adrenaline. Elena sat in the chair across from his desk. Can I ask you something? Always. If they don't take the settlement tomorrow, if we have to release everything, what happens to you? Luca finally looked up. What do you mean? I mean you're using information obtained illegally. You're threatening powerful people. You're putting yourself at risk for me. Why? I told you, your father. It's more than that, Elena interrupted. You could have just sent money, protected us from a distance. You didn't have to get personally involved. Luca was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark gardens. When Isabella died, I made myself a promise that I would never again stand by while someone I had the power to protect was harmed. Your father didn't stand by. He acted, even though it cost him everything. Luca turned back to face Elena. I'm not going to dishonor his memory by doing less. But what if this destroys you? What if the Whitmores come after you legally? What if... Then they come after me. I've survived worse. Luca's smile was gentle. Elena, you're not responsible for protecting me. Let me protect you. It's what I should have been doing all along. I'm not your responsibility. No, you're my choice. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning Elena wasn't quite ready to examine. She stood. Whatever happens tomorrow, thank you. For everything. Thank me when it's over. But as Elena returned to her room, she found herself hoping it wouldn't be over too quickly. Despite the chaos and fear and uncertainty, Despite the war being waged around her, she felt more alive than she had in months. Maybe years. Maybe ever. The next morning arrived with the weight of a verdict. Elena woke early, dressed carefully, and joined Luca for breakfast. Her mother was already there, looking nervous but determined. They ate in near silence, the clock on the wall ticking toward noon with agonizing slowness. At 11:30, Luca's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his expression sharpening. Bell. He put it on speaker. The lawyer's voice filled the room, tight with barely controlled anger. My clients have reviewed your terms. And? A pause. Then, they agree, with one modification. We're not negotiating, Luca said flatly. This isn't a negotiation. It's a clarification. Bell's voice was clipped. The public apology will acknowledge errors in judgment, but will not admit to criminal wrongdoing. The charitable donation will be made anonymously. And Brandon's treatment will be voluntary, not court-mandated. Luca looked at Elena, his expression asking the question. She thought about it for a moment, then nodded. Acceptable, Luca said. Have the agreement drawn up and delivered by end of business today. Once it's signed, this is finished. Understood. And Mr. DeSantis, my clients want it made very clear that they expect you to honor your end. No leaks, no revelations, no revenge. As long as they honor theirs, we have no interest in further engagement. Luca's voice was ice. But if they violate any term of this agreement, if they so much as speak Elena's name in public, every piece of evidence we have goes public within the hour. Make sure they understand that. They understand? The line went dead. Elena exhaled shakily. It's over? It's over, Luca confirmed. Rosa started crying. Not sad tears, Elena realized. Relief. Her mother buried her face in her hands and sobbed, like she'd been holding it in for weeks. Elena moved to her side, wrapping her arms around Rosa's shaking shoulders. It's okay, Mama. We're safe now. I was so scared, Rosa whispered. So scared they'd hurt you, that I'd lose you like I lost your father. You didn't lose me. I'm right here. They held each other while Luca quietly left the room, giving them privacy. Now? Rosa asked. Now we figure out what now? Rosa asked. Now we figure out what comes next, Elena said. Together. But even as she said it, Elena knew that her old life, the cramped apartment, the endless shifts, the constant struggle, was gone. She couldn't go back to being the invisible girl who accepted whatever scraps life offered. She'd walked through fire and come out changed. The question was, who had she become? The settlement agreement arrived by courier at 4 o'clock that afternoon, bound in expensive leather and bearing the Whitmore family seal. Catherine reviewed every page with meticulous attention while Elena, Luca, and Rosa waited in tense silence. Finally, Catherine looked up. It's exactly as negotiated. Public apology to be issued within 72 hours. All legal actions dropped immediately. $5 million donation to the Coalition Against Domestic Abuse, made anonymously. Brandon agrees to enter a 12-month treatment program for behavioral issues. And a permanent restraining order preventing any member of the Whitmore family from contacting either Elena or Rosa Marino. $5 million? Elena's voice came out strangled. I thought it was $1 million. Apparently Gerald decided to be generous, probably hoping the larger amount buys goodwill. Catherine's smile was thin. Or maybe he's just that desperate to make this go away. So it's done? Rosa asked quietly. Really done? Once we sign and they sign, yes, it's done. Catherine slid the document across the table. Elena, this is your decision. You can sign and end this now, or we can push for more. Elena stared at the pages, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The wedding that never happened. The lies that had shattered her world. The women who'd suffered before her. The battle that had consumed the past 2 weeks of her life. She picked up the pen and signed her name in careful, deliberate script. It's done, she said. Catherine gathered the papers. I'll have these delivered back to Bell within the hour. The moment they countersign, you're free. Free. The word should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt strange and undefined, like stepping off solid ground into open air. After Catherine left, Rosa excused herself to rest, leaving Elena alone with Luca in his study. He poured 2 glasses of wine and handed her one. How do you feel? He asked. I don't know. Relieved? Exhausted? Empty? Elena sipped the wine, barely tasting it. Like I just survived something I still don't fully understand. You survived a predator who thought you were easy prey. That's something to be proud of. Is it? I feel like I just fell into all of this. You did most of the actual fighting. Luca sat beside her on the leather couch. You walked away from that altar. You told your truth on national television. You refused to back down when powerful people tried to break you. That wasn't me fighting, Elena. That was you. With your protection, your resources, your people. She turned to look at him. What happens now? Now that the war is over? Now you decide what kind of life you want to build. Just like that? Just like that. Luca's expression was unreadable. You and your mother are welcome to stay here as long as you need, Mrs. Chen has already prepared a suite for Rosa, or if you prefer, I can arrange an apartment for you both. Somewhere secure, comfortable, far from the Whitmore's reach. Elena heard what he wasn't saying. He was offering her an exit, a clean break, the chance to walk away from him the same way she'd walked away from Brandon. And if I don't know what I want yet, then you take time to figure it out. Luca's voice was gentle. There's no rush, Elena. You've spent months living someone else's life. You're entitled to some time living your own. They sat in silence as the light outside shifted from afternoon to evening. Elena felt the weight of everything settling on her shoulders. Not crushing, but present. Real. Can I ask you something? She finally said. Anything. Why didn't you ever tell me? About my father, about what you'd been doing, about any of it? You've been watching over us for 17 years. Why stay hidden? Luca was quiet for a long moment. Because your father asked me to. He was very specific in his last words. Keep them safe. Keep them ignorant. Keep them out of my world. I honored that request for as long as I could. Until I was about to marry Brandon. Until you were in danger I couldn't protect you from without revealing myself. Luca met her eyes. I broke my promise to your father. I've been questioning whether that was the right choice. It was the right choice, Elena said firmly. If you hadn't come to that wedding, I'd be Mrs. Brandon Whitmore right now. I'd be trapped in a lie, waiting for the day he decided to discard me. You saved me from that. You saved yourself. I just provided the tools. Stop being so modest. It's annoying. Elena surprised herself by laughing. You orchestrated a war against one of the most powerful families in the city. You hacked their systems, exposed their secrets, threatened them with complete destruction. That's not just providing tools. Luca's smile was slight but genuine. Fair point. The next 72 hours passed in strange, suspended animation. The Whitmores issued their public apology, carefully worded to avoid admitting actual wrongdoing, but acknowledging errors in judgment and regret for any harm caused. The media dissected every word. Social media exploded with commentary. But for Elena, it all felt distant, like something happening to someone else. Rosa slowly began to relax, the constant tension draining from her shoulders as days passed without new threats or revelations. She and Mrs. Chen discovered a shared love of gardening and spent hours in the estate's greenhouse, talking quietly while tending to orchids. Elena found herself wandering the mansion, exploring rooms she hadn't noticed before. A library with floor-to-ceiling books in 6 languages. An art gallery with paintings that belonged in museums. A music room with a grand piano that looked like it had been played recently. She was examining a painting, abstract, all blues and grays and violent slashes of red, when Luca found her. Isabella loved that one, he said from the doorway. She said it reminded her of the ocean during a storm, beautiful and terrifying at once. Elena studied the painting with new eyes. Did she paint? She took lessons for a few years, said it helped her process things she couldn't put into words. Luca moved to stand beside her. She would have liked you, I think. You have the same kind of fire, the same refusal to accept injustice. I didn't know I had that until recently. It was always there. You just didn't have reason to show it. Luca paused. I received word this morning. The 3 women who were willing to speak about Brandon's pattern of abuse, they're being approached by a documentary filmmaker, someone who wants to tell the full story. Elena turned to look at him. Will they be safe? Catherine is reviewing their contracts, making sure they're protected. The filmmaker seems legitimate, more interested in justice than sensationalism. Luca's expression was thoughtful. Your story might end up helping people you'll never meet. That feels strange. Like I didn't do anything special, I just refused to be used. That is special, Elena. More than you know. A week after the settlement, Rosa announced she was ready to return to her apartment. Elena helped her pack the few belongings she'd brought, feeling an unexpected pang at the thought of her mother leaving. You could stay longer, Elena offered. There's plenty of room. I know, but this isn't my home. I need my own space, my own life. Rosa folded a sweater carefully. Besides, you need time to figure out what comes next without your mother hovering. You don't hover. I do. I've been hovering since your father died, trying to protect you from everything. Look where it got us. Rosa's smile was wry. Time for both of us to stand on our own feet. Will you be okay? Alone? Mija, I've been alone for 17 years. I'll manage. Rosa touched Elena's cheek. But you, what are you going to do? I don't know yet. Are you staying here? With him? Elena heard the careful neutrality in her mother's tone. I don't know that either. Luca said I could stay as long as I need, but this isn't your home either, Rosa finished. Elena, can I give you some advice? Always. Don't trade one man's protection for another's. I know Luca isn't like Brandon. I know he's been good to us. But you need to find out who you are when you're not being rescued or protected or watched over. You need to stand alone before you can stand with someone. The word settled over Elena like a weight. Her mother was right. She'd gone from her mother's apartment to Brandon's fairy tale to Luca's protection without ever really standing on her own. Rosa left the next morning in a car Luca arranged, with a security detail Elena suspected would remain in place despite her mother's protests about not needing protection. After she was gone, the mansion felt larger, emptier. Elena found Luca in the library, reading with his usual intense focus. He looked up when she entered. Your mother got off safely? Yes. Thank you for the car, and the security team you absolutely sent despite her saying no. Luca's smile was unrepentant. I have no idea what you're talking about. Elena sat in the chair across from him. I need to ask you for something. Anything. I need you to help me find a job and an apartment. Nothing fancy, just something mine. Luca's expression shifted, became unreadable. You're leaving. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not someone's fiancé or someone's debt or someone's victim. Elena's voice was steady despite the uncertainty churning in her stomach. My mother was right. I need to stand on my own before I can figure out what I actually want. I understand. Luca set down his book. What kind of work are you interested in? I don't know, something meaningful. Something that helps people, maybe? Elena laughed self-consciously. I know that sounds naive. It sounds like someone who's been through hell and wants to make sure others don't have to. Luca was quiet for a moment. Catherine's organization, the Coalition Against Domestic Abuse that's receiving the Whitmore's donation, they're looking for people with personal experience, victim advocates, support coordinators, people who understand what it's like to be manipulated by someone you trusted. Elena's breath caught. You think I could do that? I think you'd be exceptional at it. You have empathy, strength, and firsthand knowledge of how predators operate. That's valuable. But I don't have training or a degree in social work so get training, take classes, build the skills you need. Luca leaned forward. Elena, you're 29 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. Don't limit yourself based on what you think you're qualified for. Figure out what you care about and then become qualified. The idea took root in Elena's mind, growing and spreading like sunlight through clouds, helping women who'd been where she was, using her experience to make sure others didn't suffer alone. It felt right in a way nothing else had in a long time. I'll need to start small, she said. Maybe volunteer first, see if it's really what I want. Catherine can arrange that. As for the apartment, Luca pulled out his phone and sent a quick message. I have a property manager who handles several buildings in safe neighborhoods. I'll have her send you listings. Nothing connected to me, nothing that would make you feel obligated. Just normal apartments for normal rent. Normal rent that I can't afford yet since I don't have a job? So I'll cover the first few months while you get established. Consider it back payment for the 17 years your father's sacrifice protected someone I loved. Luca's tone was firm. No arguments. Elena wanted to argue anyway, but the practical part of her brain recognized she had no leverage. Okay, but I'm paying you back. If that makes you feel better, sure. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in her new apartment, a modest one-bedroom in a building that had seen better days but was clean and secure and entirely hers. The furniture was minimal, mostly provided by Mrs. Chen, who'd appeared with a truck full of extras from the estate that were absolutely not extras, but items carefully selected for Elena's new life. She'd started volunteering at the Coalition 3 days a week, answering phones and learning about resources for domestic abuse survivors. The work was harder than she'd expected, hearing stories that echoed her own, talking to women still trapped in situations they couldn't escape, but it was also deeply fulfilling in a way her cafe jobs had never been. Catherine had taken her under her wing, introducing her to counselors and advocates, explaining the legal frameworks around abuse and manipulation. Elena absorbed it all like a sponge, finally finding something that engaged not just her time, but her passion. Luca visited once, ostensibly to make sure the apartment was secure, but really, Elena suspected, to make sure she was okay. They'd had coffee in her small kitchen, the conversation easy despite the strangeness of the reverse dynamic. He was in her space now, not the other way around. You look good, he'd said as he was leaving. Lighter. Elena realized he was right. The constant anxiety that had plagued her since the wedding had faded. She was sleeping better, eating better, laughing more. She was building something real. 2 months after moving into her apartment, Elena got a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, still wary of reporters or Whitmore proxies, but something made her pick up. Elena Marino? A woman's voice, tentative and nervous. Speaking. My name is Rachel Hoffman. I'm one of the women Brandon Whitmore manipulated before you. I saw your interview with Margaret Chen, and I needed to thank you. Elena's breath caught. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. I've spent 3 years thinking I was crazy, that I'd imagined the whole thing, that I deserved what happened because I was too stupid to see through him. Rachel's voice cracked. But watching you tell your story, hearing about the bet, knowing I wasn't the only one, it gave me my sanity back. I'm so sorry you went through that. I'm sorry we both did. But Elena, because of you, I finally told my therapist the truth. I finally stopped blaming myself. And I'm one of the women working with the documentary filmmaker. We're going to make sure everyone knows what he did. They talked for an hour, comparing stories, sharing the strange specific details that proved Brandon had used the same playbook on all of them. By the time they hung up, Elena felt both drained and energized. This was why the fight had mattered, not just for her, for Rachel and the others who'd suffered in silence. That night, Elena called Luca. He answered on the second ring. Elena, is everything all right? Everything's fine. I wanted to tell you something. She took a breath. One of the other women Brandon manipulated called me today. She thanked me for speaking out, said it gave her permission to stop blaming herself. That's wonderful. It is. But Luca, I couldn't have done any of that without you. Without your protection, your resources, your willingness to go to war when I couldn't fight alone. Elena's voice softened. I never properly thanked you for everything. You don't need to thank me. I do. So thank you for honoring your debt to my father, for seeing me as someone worth protecting, for helping me find my strength. She paused. I know I needed space to figure myself out, but I don't want you to think that means I don't value what you did for me. Luca was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. How is the figuring yourself out going? Good. Really good, actually. The work at the coalition is challenging, but I love it. Catherine thinks I should consider going back to school, getting a degree in social work or counseling. I'm thinking about it. You should do it. You'd be excellent. The thing is, Elena hesitated, then pushed forward. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what my mother said about standing alone before standing with someone. And she was right. I needed this time. But Luca, I don't want to stand alone forever. The silence stretched out, heavy with possibility. What are you saying, Elena? I'm saying I'd like to have coffee with you, sometime. When you're not protecting me, or saving me, or fulfilling a debt. Just coffee. As two people who might want to get to know each other. She could almost hear his smile through the phone. I'd like that very much. But I need you to understand something first. I'm not the girl you rescued from that wedding anymore. I'm figuring out who I am, and that person might be different from what you expect. I need you to be okay with that. Elena, I didn't fall for the girl at the wedding. I fell for the woman who walked away from a lie, even though it terrified her. The woman who chose truth over security. The woman who turned her pain into purpose. Luca's voice was warm. Whoever you become, I suspect I'm going to find her extraordinary. Elena felt something loosening in her chest, like a knot she didn't know she'd been carrying. Saturday, there's a cafe near my apartment. Nothing fancy. Saturday. Text me the address. They said goodbye, and Elena set down her phone, feeling lighter than she had in months. This wasn't a rescue. This wasn't a debt being paid or an obligation being fulfilled. This was a choice. Her choice. The next few months passed in a blur of growth and discovery. Elena enrolled in community college, taking night classes in psychology and social work while continuing her volunteer work at the coalition. Catherine officially hired her part-time, giving her real responsibilities. Intake interviews with new clients, coordination with legal advocates, even some public speaking at fundraisers. Coffee with Luca became a weekly ritual, then twice weekly, then something that happened whenever their schedules aligned. They talked about everything. Her classes, his business ventures, their shared love of old movies, their completely opposite taste in music. He told her stories about Isabella, about the life they'd built together, and the grief that had followed her death. Elena told him about her childhood, about her father's quiet strength, about the dreams she'd buried under layers of survival. It was nothing like her relationship with Brandon had been. There was no performance, no pretending, no trying to be someone she thought he wanted. With Luca, Elena could just be herself, messy, uncertain, still figuring things out. 6 months after moving into her apartment, Elena got a call from the documentary filmmaker. The project was nearly complete, and they wanted Elena to participate, not as a victim, but as an expert. Someone who could speak to the patterns of manipulation, the psychology of predators like Brandon, the importance of speaking out. She said yes. The filming took place over 2 days in a professional studio. Elena sat across from the interviewer and told her story again, but this time with distance and perspective. This time as someone who'd survived and transformed, rather than someone still bleeding from fresh wounds. When the documentary premiered 3 months later at a film festival, Elena attended with her mother, Catherine, Sophia, and Luca. Watching her story unfold on screen, interwoven with Rachel's and the other women's, building a comprehensive picture of Brandon's predatory pattern, was surreal and cathartic. The audience gave a standing ovation when it ended. The filmmaker won an award for social impact documentary. And most importantly, the coalition's hotline saw a 300% increase in calls from women ready to leave abusive situations. Elena's story had helped change lives, had helped save lives. That night, after the screening, Elena and Luca walked through the city streets. It was late spring, the air warm and full of promise. "How does it feel?" Luca asked. "Seeing your story told like that?" "Surreal, powerful." "Right," Elena smiled. "Like maybe all of it happened for a reason. I don't know if I believe in reasons, but I believe in what you've built from it." They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Elena stopped, turning to face him. "I need to tell you something." Luca's expression grew serious. "What is it?" "I'm in love with you." The words came out clear and certain. "I've been in love with you for a while now, but I needed to be sure it was real. That I wasn't just confusing gratitude for love or protection for romance. But this is real, Luca. This is choice." He was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes searching her face. "I'm in love with you too. Have been since you walked out of that ballroom with your head high and your dignity intact. So what do we do about it? We take our time. We keep building what we've started. We let it be real and messy and complicated." Luca reached for her hand. No rescue, no fairy tale. Just two people choosing each other. Elena laced her fingers through his. "I can live with that." 1 year after the wedding, that never happened, Elena stood in a garden surrounded by the people who mattered. Not 300 society guests, not a spectacle designed for cameras and gossip, just 30 people. Her mother, holding Mrs. Chen's hand and smiling through happy tears. Catherine and Sophia, who'd become not just colleagues but genuine friends. Marcus and David and the others from Luca's team who'd gone to war on her behalf. Rachel and 2 of the other women from the documentary, who Elena now spoke with regularly. And a handful of others, people from the coalition, classmates from her social work program, neighbors from her apartment building, people who knew the real Elena, who'd seen her at her worst and stayed, who celebrated her strength without needing her to be perfect. Luca stood at the center of the garden in a simple gray suit, no tuxedo or theatrical staging. When Elena walked toward him in a dress she'd chosen herself, elegant but understated, comfortable enough to dance in, his smile was genuine and unguarded. There was no aisle to walk down. No grand entrance, just Elena moving through people who loved her toward a man who saw her exactly as she was. The ceremony was brief and personal. No traditional vows about obeying or being rescued. Instead, they'd written their own. "I choose you," Elena said, her voice steady. "Not because you saved me, but because you helped me save myself. Not because you're powerful, but because you use that power to protect people who can't protect themselves. I choose you every day, and I'll keep choosing you for all the days we have." Luca's response was equally simple and devastating. "I choose you, not as a debt to your father, but as my partner, my equal, my home. You turn trauma into purpose and pain into strength. I will spend my life honoring that courage." When they kissed, it felt like beginning rather than ending, like the start of something built on truth rather than illusion. The reception was held in Luca's garden, the same place Elena had once sat with her mother processing the chaos of their new reality. Now it was transformed with lights and laughter, simple decorations, and good food. There was dancing and toasting and the kind of joy that comes from surviving something terrible and choosing to thrive anyway. Rosa pulled Elena aside at one point, her eyes wet with tears that were definitely happy this time. "Your father would be so proud of you, mija. Not because you married well, but because you became who you were meant to be. I wish he could be here. He is here. In you. In your strength. In your choice to stand up even when it was terrifying." Rosa cupped Elena's face. "You're not the girl I raised to survive anymore. You're the woman who learned to live. That's everything he would have wanted." As the evening wore on, Elena found herself standing at the edge of the garden, watching her wedding celebration with a sense of wonder. This was nothing like the fairy tale she'd imagined with Brandon. There was no princess transformation, no being swept away, no rescue from poverty and obscurity. Instead, there was something better: partnership, respect, Love built on honesty rather than illusion. Luca appeared beside her, slipping his arm around her waist. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about how different this is from what I thought I wanted a year ago. Better or worse? So much better. Elena leaned into him. Because this is real. I'm real. We're real. No regrets about the wedding that never happened? Elena thought about Brandon's bet, about the 300 guests who would have watched her walk into a cage, about the life she would have lived if Luca hadn't objected. Not even one, she said firmly. That wedding would have been beautiful and empty. This one is small and true. I'll take truth over beauty any day. They stayed like that for a while, watching their friends and family celebrate, the night air warm around them. Then Luca turned her to face him. I have something for you. A wedding gift. He handed her an envelope. Elena opened it to find documents, legal papers establishing the Elena Marino Foundation for Domestic Abuse Survivors, funded with $5 million, the same amount the Whitmores had paid to make their crimes disappear. You turned their silence money into something meaningful, Elena whispered, into hope. You did that. I just handled the paperwork. Luca's smile was gentle. You said you wanted to help people. Now you can, on your terms, using their guilt money to save the women they tried to break. Elena felt tears building, but didn't try to stop them. This was who Luca was, someone who saw her dreams and made them possible not by doing it for her, but by giving her the tools to do it herself. Thank you, she said, for this, for everything, for seeing me. Always, he promised. As the party continued around them, Elena thought about the journey that had brought her here, the bet that had shattered her illusions, the objection that had saved her life, the war that had forced her to find her strength, the peace that had allowed her to build something real. She'd started this journey as someone's punchline, someone's transaction, someone's bet. She'd ended it as her own person, her own choice, her own triumph. Not a bride who was never chosen, but a woman who chose herself. And that made all the difference. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Elena sat in her office at the foundation. The organization had grown enough to need actual office space, reviewing applications for their new scholarship program. Women who'd escaped abusive situations and wanted to go back to school. Women rebuilding their lives from nothing. Women who'd been exactly where Elena had been. Her phone buzzed with a text from Luca. Coming home early? Dinner at our place? Their place. They'd moved in together 3 months ago, to a house that was neither his mansion nor her modest apartment, but something they'd chosen together. Something that felt like home rather than refuge. Elena smiled and texted back, "Perfect, I'll cook." As she packed up her work, she caught sight of the framed photo on her desk. Not a wedding photo, though those existed. This was from the documentary premiere. Elena standing with Rachel and the other women, all of them smiling, all of them survivors, all of them stronger for having spoken their truth. Beside it was another photo. Her father, young and smiling, holding baby Elena in his arms. She kept it there as a reminder of the sacrifice that had made everything possible, the courage that ran in her blood. Antonio Marino had taught her, without ever meaning to, that sometimes you had to fight for what was right, even when the cost was everything. That protecting the vulnerable mattered more than protecting yourself. That honor was worth dying for. Elena had learned those lessons well. She'd just chosen to live them instead. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a message from an unknown number. She hesitated, old habits making her wary, then opened it. It was from one of the scholarship recipients. A photo of the young woman at her college orientation, beaming with pride and possibility. Below it, "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. You saved my life." Elena felt the familiar sting of tears, but they were good tears, purposeful tears. She'd walked away from a fairy tale and found something better. A life built on truth and strength and choice. A partnership forged in fire. A purpose born from pain. She wasn't a princess rescued by a prince. She was a warrior who'd rescued herself and then turned around to help others do the same. And she'd never been more certain that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As Elena locked up the office and headed home to the man who'd helped her find her strength and the life they were building together, she realized something profound. Brandon Whitmore's bet had been worth $10,000 to him, but to Elena, it had been priceless, because it had forced her to discover who she really was, what she was truly capable of, what she actually deserved. She'd been nobody's bet, nobody's transaction, nobody's conquest. She'd always been Elena Marino, daughter of a hero, survivor of manipulation, architect of her own destiny, and that was worth more than all the fairy tales in the world.